What up, people? What's good? Salute.
Yes, sir.
Yo, what's good, everybody? Salute to the tribe. We're hip hop and comics and hip hop. We're a niche channel. We're a niche channel and reserved for the best. What up? This is Reno Noir. This is the sixth element of hip hop. I am your host, Reno. We got our co-host Stu Dog, y'all know is on the way. He'll be here at half past Wu-Tang. So we'll get that. But yo, all right, so today we're gonna talk about House of the Dragon. All right, House of the Dragon, the new Game of Thrones spinoff that, quite frankly, HBO is depending on. HBO, they HBOmax going through some things, and I think the future of HBO is really riding on the House of the Dragon. If there was one winner that emerged from August 4th, Warner Brothers Discovery investor call, it was definitely HBO. The premium cable channel, turned legacy brand, was repeatedly shouted out by David Zaslav, and welcoming Stu Dog to the joint. What's good, homie?
What's up, man? What's going on, man? Excuse my tardiness.
I'm just
traffic
down. Nah, you good, man. We good. I just started like 30 seconds ago.
Oh, okay. Now I'm just clowning around, man.
I hope
had some connection issues, man. That's all. It's this weather, man. Listen, with everybody online, everybody in the house trying to beat the heat, man. It's slowing down. It's slowing everything down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can't.
My pop says better not be no spoilers. I hate spoilers. No, will not be no spoilers. Pop. So rest assured. Salute Slade. What's good? Corey. What's good, homie? Corey in the building. Original Origin.
Corey Edges. Salute. Original Origin. Salute.
But yeah, so I was just talking about how I think HBO's future is riding on this House of the Dragon success. It was certainly the big winner from August 4th's Warner Brothers Discovery investor call, and the brand was being shouted out repeatedly by CEO David Zaslav and his team as the crown jewel of their company, and HBO head Casey Bloys was called a unicorn. And while rumors abound about cost-cutting measures, Zaslav isn't planning on skimping on HBO's future slate, saying, he says, we're going to spend dramatically more on HBO this year and next year than we spent last year and the year before. So rest assured, just because, certain things have been canceled and moved around, we're not going to, be missing out on big stuff like House of the Dragon. And this is good news for HBO. Comes with a caveat, though. Throughout the investor call, HBO's future was repeatedly ensnared, with the presumed success of House of the Dragon. This is the hotly anticipated prequel to Game of Thrones, arguably the biggest TV show ever of all time. And it was revealed that HBO is embarking on the largest and most expensive marketing campaign ever to make the show a smash hit. And Game of Thrones itself was cited as a key franchise of the new corporate conglomerate alongside Batman, Superman, Harry Potter, Shark Week, the 90-Day Fiancé universe. But translation, Warner Brothers Discovery is betting big that HBO and its biggest show ever, Game of Thrones, can light the way for the corporation's future. House of the Dragon. I mean, what can I say? The first episode, loved by many, phenomenal reviews by most. I think people won't be as interested as Game of Thrones, no matter how much they spend. I mean, this is, listen, Game of Thrones was what it was. And because of Game of Thrones, this show already has a built-in fan base. It's already a success before it starts, as long as it doesn't suck. So they're good. But a couple weeks back, House of the Dragon had its world premiere in Los Angeles, and the lucky few who got to see it had almost uniformly wonderful things to say. Hype will reign. But now, just over a week out from the official broadcast premiere, it's coming this Sunday or Monday. HBO showed off its fancy new prequel in Europe, and we have a fresh round of impressions to sort through. But for those who don't know, House of the Dragon is set 200 to 300 years before the Game of Thrones events from the show, the books, whatever. When Westeros is at peace, the Targaryens are at their height of power. Um, this is this is like when they've got the most dragons, the most Targaryens alive in power, the best, the most respect, just the best time for Targaryens and Westeros. I mean, this was a time of prosperity. Like in the main show, you only had Viserys, and Daenerys. Those are the only two, Targaryens that we ever met. But we hear about them. We hear lots about them. We hear about the Mad King. We hear about, Aegon, conquering with his dragons, coming in and conquering Westeros. So we hear about Targaryens all the time and how powerful they were, how big they were, how rich and amazing the empire was at that time. But now we get to see it. Now we get to actually live in it. This is just before the bloom came off the rose for the Targaryen family, so to speak. This is like the beginning of the end for their family. This takes place right then. Big civil war. Half of the Targaryens trying to kill the other half of the Targaryens. But one of the things they did do in the first episode is they let you know that one of the most dangerous things for the Targaryens is other Targaryens. Even though there's a ton of familiar stuff, there's several moments during the show, episode 1, items like the dialogue that are meant to be direct references to the main Game of Thrones show, characters from the main show later in the timeline, things that they'll do, big things that will happen. Interestingly enough, I was surprised to know that there was a lot of direct references to the actual books separate from the shows. There'll be several moments during episode 1 where even if you're not like a huge, book reader, you'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know that. I recognize that. He said that." So, uh it, it felt like there was just enough hand holding in episode 1 that I think it'll make it easy for people who didn't watch the original show. I don't know who that is, but to start you up, Stu, for one. But even if you're not a super fan of the books and you just watch the show, you still pick up a lot of the references that they make to the events of the main show from the book. But the story is actually mostly based on the Fire and Blood book. All right, he's got the main novels. It's called The Song of Ice and Fire, and that's what the show Game of Thrones is based on. He does a standalone book called Fire and Blood, which is just about the Targaryens from the time Aegon conquers Westeros until the Mad King is usurped. So it covers that whole thing. But it's still it's like a textbook, the way it reads, Fire and Blood, versus the other books where they read like a fiction novel. You know, Fire and Blood reads like a historical reference book. It just it's interestingly written by one of the Grand Maesters, which is like their form of doctor in Westeros in that universe. So or historian, scientist, the whole gamut of things that the Maester does. Messages, the whole, he's writing everything he does. He just like that whole guy. But so this one guy, he writes this book and it's telling the histories of Westeros, of the Targaryens, and it's written as a history book. It's not written as a novel. So is just about this family and the things that happen to them during different periods in history. But one of the other differences from the main A Song of Ice and Fire novel is that it's not written in first person perspective. It's written by, a few third parties, the Maesters, trying to come up with, trying to remember what they heard and stuff like that. So it's not science, right? It's not engraved. These are oral sort of hand me downs. So it's not gonna be exactly accurate, right? It's not, exactly what happened, but it's from the perspective of this maester that's writing it. It's very interesting. You've got Storm of Swords, Clash of Kings, uh, in the original books, and they're all written in first person from, the perspective of that character, what they're thinking, what they're feeling as it's happening. But what they aimed to do when they were doing this series was to give you a more objective tale about what actually happened. So they're taking like an old maester's remembrance of what happened and giving you more of that objective A Song of Ice and Fire treatment, where you get more of what each of the characters is thinking and feeling during all these events. But I think in Fire and Blood, there's like an old maester, and the court jester. There's the jester Mushroom, which we're going to talk about in a second. They left him out of the show. Um, why I don't know, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Maybe they felt that he didn't develop the story enough to be part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's like when you have a lot of people get upset when Harrison Ford said he was glad they killed off his character. But when
Mm-hmm.
you interview him and you ask him, he says that he just didn't think Han Solo was a pivotal enough character
Right.
to keep going in Star Wars
Right.
or for him to keep playing. He just thought that his role was just so small that it
Yeah.
didn't make a difference. It didn't progress the story
Yeah.
or anything. It
Well,
just
this particular character, he's like the main narrator of most of the story. So I think what they did was they just melded him and the other character maybe into one, because they do that a lot for TV shows. But
yeah,
so there's
or they'll gender swap them or come up with something similar.
right. Now he's a controversial character, and I'll break him down in a second, but there's a few reasons why I
Or maybe
think
season two. Maybe we might see him on season two. You never
maybe
know because this is only the first season.
this is only the
Or
first
we might
season,
not. Right.
and it's
Because you got to
based.
remember in what is it, Walking Dead,
Mhm.
we didn't meet the character of Daryl until almost the
Right,
second season.
right.
But Daryl was strictly written for the TV show. He's not in the comics or
Is that
anything like
right?
that. Yeah, Daryl's not in the comics. He's not.
I
He's
think I heard
literally.
that.
That's why he lived. That's why he's one of the ones that lived and is
Right,
still there. Because in the
right.
original Walking Dead, everybody dies except for Rick and Michonne at the
Mm,
end.
mhm.
Um, and they said that they'll never kill Negan. The writer said they'll never kill Negan,
Hell
even
no,
though
that's their
people,
money. That's their golden goose.
people wanted Negan dead, but the writers he said they'll never kill Negan. Negan will never die. He'll always be like the Joker. He'll disappear. He'll
Mhm.
come back. But he'll never die. So
Right, right. Well, um, they hired the showrunner before, HBO had heard about the show, and they worked on it for a while. Then George R. Martin brought this to HBO, said, "Make this show," brought the showrunner themselves, and Ryan Condal is the one that does most of the writing, and I forget the name of the other guy, but he directed a lot of the best episodes of Game of Thrones. He's mostly focused with like the practical aspects of making the show and the way they film it and things like that. He did the Hard Home episode, Battle of the Bastards, Wins a Winner. I mean, some of the best episodes. But George R. R. Martin, didn't make a lot of the decisions. But he's got way more control over this show and the other spin-offs than he had on Game of Thrones, which is a very good thing. Because a lot of the problems with with Game of Thrones was the shit that they did that wasn't, from the books, that last season and all that crap they did, made up shit. But the way George R. R. Martin does a lot of his world building in this is he'll across history There's a lot of recurring names, motifs, different generations, like, families will reuse names across generations. You'll hear the 2nd, the 3rd, the 5th, the 8th, and so there'll be names on the shows that will pop up, and you'll recognize the names and house names, and but during this period in history, a lot of the main characters are from the great houses, um, so, like, the Starks, the Lannisters, the Baratheons, for instance, are present in this show, but they're not as big of
I
characters
mean,
as the
yeah,
Targaryens, the Valerians, the Hightowers, and they
they're not the
basically
main focus,
right, they're not the main
basically.
focus.
Yeah.
Um,
Believe it or not, I mean, when they introduced the dragons in Game of Thrones on the TV show, a lot of
mhm,
people were intrigued. That was like the big thing. People wanted to
yeah,
know more, but they couldn't show us.
yeah.
So I guess this is their way of doing that.
Well, this
You know?
time in the universe, that universe is the time where there were the most dragons at any one time. Like, they talked about in Game of Thrones times when there were big dragons and then they gradually got smaller as they evolved. But this is at the height. This is when the dragons are the biggest, the most plentiful. They're they're at the height of their power. Just non-fuckwittable. And then the Valerians is a vassal house from Targaryen, and they also have Targaryen blood, so they also have that silver hair. Um, but during the show, they've got one of the main characters is the Sea Snake. He's one of the best naval commanders in history of Westeros, and he's played by a black actor in this, by the way. It looks awesome. He's got the white dreads. Um, but so even though there's a lot of familiar sites and places that we'll visit in the show, a lot of the main locations that we'll visit are meant to be brand new locations that we heard about during the main show, but never actually got to visit. Like Driftmark, which is meant to be the home of the Valerians, which is right next to Dragonstone. We'll also spend a lot more time in Dragonstone, obviously. But even though there's a bunch of new places, new characters, great houses that you didn't see in Game of Thrones, the way things flowed in episode one, apparently it didn't feel confusing. They didn't try to throw too much at you at once. So if you're brand new to the show, or if you have a hard time with that kind of stuff, don't worry. Even though there's a lot of characters, arguably the most important three characters on the show are going to be Rhaenyra, Alicent Hightower, and Daemon Targaryen. The series starts much earlier in the timeline, right? So they're jumping backwards, forwards, and backwards all the time. They start early, they jump forward later. I think about halfway through the episode, and you get the older versions of the characters. And I think of all the main characters, only Rhaenyra and Alicent have younger actresses and older actresses both playing the characters as they, switch. But it's like 10 year, it's a 10-year gap. So when you pick up with the characters, they're meant to be like young girls. But like Matt Smith, for instance, is playing Daemon Targaryen in all periods of the timeline because he doesn't look that much different 10 years later. So, but confusing as it sounds, the way they present it in episodes is really easy to follow. So don't worry about that. But all three of those characters apparently did a great job. Everybody praised them. There's a ton of new settings that they had to reintroduce you to the big locations in Westeros. But like I said, things look very familiar, but they are very different at this time. Same places, but things are very different. Um, it, uh, the guy Mushroom. So to chop this up, there's this guy named Mushroom in the book. And keep in mind, this is not based on a whole book or a series of books like the Game of Thrones was. This whole show is literally based on one chapter of Fire and
Yes.
Blood. Okay, so like Fire and Blood's this whole novel, but one chapter covers the reign of Viserys the First, and Daemon Targaryen and all of these characters that are in this show. But that whole thing is told in one chapter. It's like an hour and a half long chapter. It's a meaty chapter, but so it's based just on that one thing because each chapter kind of covers a different time period in the Targaryen. history. But so there's this character. So one of the characters though is named Mushroom. And unless the trailers have deceived us, and I think reviews on episode 1, there's no sign of Mushroom, right? The character hasn't been cast, the producers haven't mentioned him, and people who have seen the premiere have confirmed that he's not there. Unless the show has some huge surprise waiting, Mushroom's not showing up in the House of Dragon, uh, which some people are kind of upset about because he's pretty integral character. But basically, he's an illiterate, foul-mouthed fool, all right, in the service of King Viserys Targaryen the First. Later, he serves the king's daughter Rhaenyra, who vies for the Iron Throne after her dad dies. But and when I call Mushroom a fool, I don't mean like he's an idiot. Actually, he's actually very intelligent. He's pretty sharp. If given to lascivious flights of fancy. But I mean, he's a court jester. He's like a comedian, right? His job is literally to tell jokes, dance around, and goof off and make the king laugh. And according to his own testimony, he was pretty good at it. And he claims he was the only person who was able to make King Viserys laugh toward the end of his life, and the only one who could make Rhaenyra Targaryen happy after the loss of her son. And Mushroom's testimony is what we have to go on. Like I said,
Mm.
Fire and Blood is a fake history book, right? It was written by Archmaester Gildane, who wanted to write a history of House Targaryen. So it's like George R. R. Martin is pretending that it's written by this Archmaester. And then, when he got to the sections about the Dance of the Dragons, because the name of this, there's a civil war and it's called Dance of Dragons historically. So when he got to the sections about Dance of Dragons, he had a number of primary sources to work with, and one came from Grandmaster or Wiley, who served King Aegon II Targaryen, and the other main claimant to the Iron Throne besides Rhaenyra. Another came from Septon Eustace. A Septon is like kind of like a nun, who also favored Aegon. Both of their accounts are biased in his favor. So it's like, but then there's Mushroom, who was loyal to Rhaenyra. And throughout the war, the people around Mushroom assumed that he was stupid and spoke freely in front of him about their plots and schemes. Like he was just an idiot. He's just there. Like we can just say whatever we want in front of him. But he listened, right? He remembered, and he gave his testimony about what he had heard to an unknown writer later in his life. And that's how we got that. But part of the fun of the book is how these sources conflict, right? Some paint events one way and some paint them another, right? So you're reading the book and you're like, well, this guy says this happened and this guy says that happened. And that's what we have to go by because this is ancient times. And, so although they do coincide on certain points, Mushroom can always be counted on to, give the most salacious, overblown version of any given event. So it's hard, to always take him seriously. Then again, uh, you know, the Targaryens are very dramatic people. So, who's to say he wasn't completely correct? But in any case, Mushroom was, around for a lot of important stuff. So the question remains, why isn't he in the show? We don't know for sure, but my guess is that it has something to do with representation. Um, Tyrion Lannister is a hard act to follow, right? And one thing we haven't mentioned about Mushroom that I haven't mentioned is that he is a dwarf, like Tyrion. And there's not a lot of prominent dwarf characters in popular TV and movies. In fact, the last big one was probably Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones, played by, wonderfully by Peter Dinklage. And Tyrion was a great character, flawed, complex, funny, intelligent. But he was also a risky character because having a dwarf in a fantasy show comes with some baggage, and people immediately think of the sprite-like hobbits, or the long-bearded, self-serious dwarves from Lord of the Rings. And one of the reasons Dinklage signed on to play Tyrion in the first place is because the character cut against all those stereotypes.
Mm.
He said dwarves in these genres always have this look, so his guard was up. He told the New York, but he said, not even my guard, my metal fence, my barbed wire was up. He said, even the Lord of the Rings had dwarf tossing jokes in it. He's like, so I was a little worried about that. But uh, he said, I had one hesitation because of the fantasy genre. I told David Benioff I didn't want a really long beard and pointy shoes, right? And so David Benioff assured him that his character uh, in this world wasn't that. And they told me about his complexity and the fact that wasn't a hero or a villain, that he was a womanizer and a drinker, and they painted a flawed and beautiful portrait of him. So I signed on. End quote. Tyrion, became one of the breakout characters, right? Game of Thrones. Dinklage became the only cast member to take home an Emmy award for acting. He pretty much owned that shit. And so on Game of Thrones, we had a complex character played by a decorated actor who broke new boundaries for the depiction of dwarfs in fantasy and on TV in general. Fairly or not, House of the Dragon has the responsibility of following that up. And Mushroom is a lewd court jester everyone assumes is simple-minded, whose job is to make a fool of himself and who literally wears pointy shoes. So, um, he farts out clouds of glitter, and silly shit, but so this is not good representation for little people. And if Dinklage had been approached for this show rather than Game of Thrones, I'm guessing he would have refused to play this character Mushroom, and I wouldn't blame him. In the case for include so House of Dragon is a show that cares about representation, as most new shows do. For instance, it's made a point to include prominent characters of color in this story, even though there aren't many in the source text. And none in this particular story. But looking at it from that angle, here's the dilemma with Mushroom. Is it better to include this dwarf character in your story, knowing that dwarves often don't feature in high profile TV shows like this? Or do you cut him because this particular dwarf character plays into uh, pernicious stereotypes? And I don't blame the producers for choosing, the latter, particularly given how unfavorably Mushroom would compare to Tyrion Lannister. Um, you know what I'm saying? And yet there are some arguments on the other side. Of course, Mushroom has a fairly big presence in Fire and Blood, and if House of the Dragon is an adaptation of Fire and Blood, it should include him, right? And I think that's a decent enough argument, particularly if House of Dragon seems to be trying to stick very close to the text. Then again, Mushroom, his function in the book is mostly given to us as an exaggerated perspective of events of the story. He doesn't play much of a role in the events himself. He's just the teller of these things, firsthand witness to shit, giving us the lowdown. But the show is doing away with the multiple perspectives conceit and giving us one cohesive narrative. So Mushroom will lift right out. And again, given how much flack, the show would ostensibly, or doubtlessly get for including him, that may be for the best. But I think that's sort of that's honestly what I think it is. I think it's just Tyrion, Peter Dinklage. How do you follow that? What little person could play a character and knock it out like Tyrion or like Peter Dinklage and not and wearing the pointy shoes and then the goofy. And so I don't see a lot of really respectable little people actors taking this role, and it's kind of, stereotypical and blah blah blah. So and rightfully so. But that's what I think it is. And but instead of cutting Mushroom, it they could have, how they'll gender swap and race swap characters. They could have I don't know what that would be, swapped, made him not a little
Swap 'em.
person. Yeah, but maybe they could have turned him
I
into a
guess
comic book character.
like a size swap. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't it's like, disability swap. I don't know what they call it, but yeah. Um, what more can I say about it? So Javier Marcos, who runs the fan site Los Siete Reinos, called the House of the Dragon premiere. He said absolutely spectacular, on par with the best episodes of Game of Thrones. Um, there's a lot of like really good reviews about this show. I mean, I could just read through them all, but You get my point. So there's a lot of great reviews. The show has been, I mean, George R. R. Martin himself actually praised it. You know, he said it was stunning.
Mm,
He said it was magnificent.
mm,
And you know, he's the writer of the source material. So his his his
mm,
his his what do you call it, opinion really holds a lot of weight, I think. Um, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, he said, what did he I wonder if I got the quote. I think he said, "Art revealed all the episodes, House of Dragon, Ryan and McGill and their amazing cast and crew have done some magnificent work." Yeah. House of Dragon is all I hoped it would be. Dark, powerful, visceral, disturbing, stunning to look at. People with complex and very human characters brought to life by some truly amazing actors. That's high praise from the man himself. So this is not like I've been super like hyped for this show and building up to it, man. I've rewatched Game of Thrones, like I've been reading the books, like I'm just getting all hype about it. But um yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Corey. Binge watch 7 and 8. So um there are there are some particular episodes. What's up? There's some particular episodes of Game of Thrones that if you haven't watched recently, um there's some certain ones that I think would sort of get you prepared for this show. You've got a week, so you can't like rewatch the whole thing. So 7 episodes that we picked. Um, you've got Winter's Coming, season 1, episode 1. Right? There's no better place for a refresher on a fictional world than its pilot episode. And Winter is Coming fits the bill about as perfectly as possible. It doubles as an excellent lead in to the House of Dragon. It features many of the same objects and themes that will carry over into the prequel series. Um, Dragon eggs, violence, mysterious deaths and schemes and plots. The first episode contains a bit of an overview of how the Targaryen reign ended more than a century after uh, House of the Dragon. And at the episode's end, the show just thrusts incest into the center of the screen. So prepare for a lot more where that came from. Because fire and blood.
mm,
Um, Second episode you want to watch is also season 1, episode 10. It's called Fire and Blood. And you know, it's not just the title, but it's also the slogan or the words for House Targaryen, right? Every house has its own little motto, little slogan, like the Starks is winter is coming. The Martells is unbowed, unbrent, unbroken. Targaryens is fire and blood. So that's what the book's named after. That's what this episode's named after. Season 1, episode 10, Game of Thrones. Check that one out. Dragons are so central to this story because they're, you know, both the symbol of Targaryen, you know, might and, you know, the very source of it. Aegon the Conqueror was outnumbered by the families that he conquered. They had much more soldiers, weapons, all of that. He had less resources. He was less familiar with the terrain, but he had dragons and his enemies didn't. So he could claim the continent for his own. Yet what happens to the dragons during dance reverberates throughout the timeline. As Thrones ends its first season, Daenerys' children, you know, become the world's first hatchlings in more than a century. So we see the Targaryen, you know, the last Targaryen birthing some dragons. So very important episode. Next episode you want to catch, season 5, episode 9, The Dance of Dragons. Um Drogon, the biggest dragon, used his dragon's fire in earlier episodes, but never such a big or powerful or destructive result. And because Daenerys also becomes the first Thrones character to ride a dragon in this episode, it's also an obvious choice to review before, you know, the fleet of dragon riders that we're going to see in the prequel. But Drogon's dramatic rescue doesn't come until the end of this episode when he comes in and saves her. First, an even more portentous scene occurs in near Winterfell, when Shireen Baratheon tells her father Stannis about the book she's reading, The Dance of the Dragons, a true telling by Grandmaster Munkin. And it's about two relatives, she says, who both thought they belonged on the Iron Throne when people started declaring for one or the other, and their fight divided the kingdoms into two. Brothers fought brothers, dragons fought dragons. By the time it was over, thousands were dead, and it was a disaster for the Targaryens, and they never truly recovered. This is what a lot of people think was sort of the end of, what ruined their house. Also, seeing a reminder of how Shireen's story ends could be a good preparation for another show with, copious child horror. um, and then next show you want to definitely catch is season 6, episode 9, Battle of the Bastards. Make sure you watch at least one episode, if not more, that Miguel Sapchenick directed. All right, he's one of the showrunners for this House of Dragons, and he directed like probably my favorite episodes of Game of Thrones. Battle of the Bastards isn't actually his best episode, though. I would say Winds of Winter, um, which we at the which is arguably the best Game of Thrones episode, but um, this is also not his best battle that he directed either, which is definitely Hard Home, when the when the monsters, when the dead uh try to take over the last of the wildlings as they try to escape. But Battle of the Bastards is the most relevant to the new show for two reasons. All right, the White Walkers from Hard Home don't appear in the House of Dragons, but Battle of the Bastards demonstrates the brutality of just man on man warfare, just human on human warfare, which will surely, be a big part of this new show. And the clash between Jon Snow and Ramsay Bolton isn't the episode's only battle. Before it goes north, it starts in Marine, where Daenerys, her three dragons, they fight and just conquer Slaver's Bay. Notice too that when all three dragons fly together, Drogon is much larger than the other two. And that's because Rhaegal and Viserion spent a while chained in captivity in the Great Pyramid. Remember, Drogon was just off. He was just out. They couldn't do nothing with him. But Rhaegal and Viserion, they put leashes on him and locked him in the basement or whatever, whatever room, and they just basically spent a long time there. And so they just didn't grow as they should have. So that's actually why Drogon is the biggest. But the next episode to write down is season 7, episode 4. All right, The Spoils of War. All right. A few factors make this a recommendation to prepare for the new show. First, Jon and Daenerys explore Dragonstone, the Targaryens' ancestral, home, which will serve as a much more frequent location in the new show. Second, Dickon Tarley comments to Jaime Lannister that he felt conflicted about his fight against the Tyrells in the previous episode. He said, I knew some of those men. I hunted with them. And Jaime responds that they didn't deserve to die, but because of their liege's political choices, here we are. And that concept of brother forced to fight against brother, neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend, will permeate in the new show, which is basically about a civil war. So it's, what you get. And oh yeah, the third, this episode features the most spectacular example of dragon warfare that Game of Thrones ever gave us. House of the Dragon will give us plenty of dragon fights, but we'll see if they can top Drogon's Dothraki aided assault of the Lannisters' loot train, which was dope. But all right, so next episode, write this down: Beyond the Wall, season 7, episode 6. Dragons are, again, such imposing weapons of war because they're tremendously powerful, tactically innovative, they're intelligent themselves. Some say smarter than humans. And while everyone else in Westeros is fighting in only two dimensions, dragon riders can attack from the sky. And it's like the Air Force. I mean, it's like how how the Air Force would just decimate any ground based troop. And nearly indestructible. Um, but not completely indestructible, just hard to kill. But um, you know, two dragons get killed in Game of Thrones, so we know it's very possible to kill them, um, but it's impossible, in good conscience to recommend season eight's The Last of the Starks. So that leaves Beyond the Wall, still a somewhat lackluster episode by itself, but in the Night King's successful javelin throw, crucial to forecasting how human forces may grapple with the airborne opponents during the dance. Now you've got The Bells. This is season 8, episode 5, one of the most controversial episodes in Thrones history, also one of its most essential to understanding the characters who will appear in this new spinoff and who will exchange acts of bravery for monstrosities in Drogon in this new show, Dragon House of the Dragon. So Targaryen terror is a family trait. Centuries of incest uh, have affected their mental, stability on the whole family line. They said, that quote, "Madness and greatness are two sides of the same coin." They said, "Every time a new Targaryen is born, the gods toss a coin in the air, and the world holds its breath to see how it will land." Basically saying, you got a 50-50 shot that they're gonna come out psychotic. Um, but nowhere is that, delicate balance more apparent than in Daenerys's turn. Um, just one episode before the finale, and that turn and ensuing finale didn't land well with viewers. I mean, a lot of people were mad about that. A lot of people just wrote the show off. I hate Game of Thrones now just because the last episode didn't end how they wanted it to end, but it's one you wanna catch. So those are definitely the 7 episodes you guys wanna catch before, the end of this week when the new show starts, so you can really, catch up if you haven't already watched the whole thing. Um, yeah, man, they say that this show is gonna be even harder to adapt, um, for several reasons. Um, like
I can believe it. I can
almost
believe
every
it.
almost every character's name sounds the same. That's number
Yep.
1. The TV Tropes Encyclopedia has a pretty rigid rule, alright, called the one Steve limit in TV, alright, which explains no 2 characters in a work of fiction should share the same first name, even similar sounding names. But George R. R. Martin doesn't abide by this, dictum. He likes to repeat character names in his books, which carries some level of verisimilitude given how parents, most notably monarchs, name their children in the real world. Fathers name their sons Junior, popular athletes inspire new names, and seemingly every congressman is named Mike or John. But, in a television show already stuffed with fantastical lore, however, that repetition could be confusing to some. Um, Almost everyone is related. Unlike Game of Thrones, which brought many different houses, different geographical locations, people just completely unrelated, all different families and all of that. Um, this is going to focus pretty much on the Targaryen family. So, um, many of them are going to look similar. The same silver hair and violet eyes.
I mean,
They'll also,
it stands to make sense if it's going to be a civil war at the end
yeah.
of the whole thing. So and that basically is the Targaryen nation at war with itself.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um, you know, or house for back in those days
right.
we didn't have nations, we had houses.
Mhm.
So it would basically be the Targaryen house having going to war with itself and
Yeah,
over something petty.
yeah.
From what I understand, it'll be over who's the ruler. I think the daughter was supposed to rule, but then they crowned someone else instead, and that's how the whole the events of this series will
Mhm.
lead up is what leads up to that.
Yeah.
Because the father, the original king, was training the daughter to take his place, sort of like a Thor and Loki type thing. And I think
Right.
that's why they're doing it because Marvel's Thor series is very popular, and with the father training Thor to be the successor and Loki not the successor, or the successor if Thor died. This is the same thing we have in this House of Dragons.
Mhm.
When the father does die, the person that he wanted to be the successor did not become the successor, and
Yeah.
that could lead to wars. That would lead back in medieval times, whatever you want to call them. That would lead to war. That would lead to big wars. I mean, uh, you seen what happened on January the 6th, but the difference with us is that we have a peaceful transition of power, and sometimes the transition of power isn't peaceful, and that's what this is going to be about the
Mm.
transition of power not falling the way it should, and the ramifications that come about because of it.
Right. Yeah. Just reading the chat here, but Slade likes the wedding. Listen, there's a
That
lot
was
of
the
Game.
dopest episode. That was the
Yeah,
dopest
that was.
episode.
Whew.
I'm
I
not.
mean, listen, you
I'm
got to go. You got the death
Reno.
of Ned Stark.
Reno. That took me by surprise. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest. Out of all the TV I ever watched in my whole entire life, I didn't even see that coming
Oh, you saw
until
this
it
game?
came.
Wait, I thought you didn't watch Game of Thrones. Who was I thinking that didn't watch Game? Somebody didn't see it, or you just watch it.
No, I watched Game of Thrones. I'm
Who
on a.
was it that
If I
didn't
go
see
to
it?
the last season, I'm probably about maybe 5 or 6 episodes
Oh,
away
okay.
from finishing the whole thing. Because for me, I was watching other stuff, and then the
Right.
pandemic hit, and I got kind of spotty with it. And I started watching This Is Us. We need to do a whole show on This Is Us because that's some good television right there.
Yes.
If you ain't never watched This Is Us,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
This.
got into This Is Us, and that kind of like that threw me for a loop. But uh,
Yeah.
but the wedding, that
Split year.
I never
Yeah.
seen
It was
anything
good.
like.
Nah, that was so out of. But it, like when they chop Ned Stark's head off at the end. I mean, okay. Spoiler alert. Sorry, guys. If you haven't seen Game of Thrones, I don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah, you been
But
hiding under a rock. Yeah.
my pops has seen the thing, so we can talk. But yeah, so yeah, I mean that first death right there, I was like, okay, this is about to be my favorite show of all time. They killed this main character like it was nothing. And why do I love that? So I love that because it means that the stakes are real. You can watch a show, you can watch a movie, and you know that the main character, no matter what danger they're in, you know they're going to come out of it because they're the main character. With Game of Thrones, there was no such, confidence. You don't like when someone's in danger, they very well could die. It doesn't matter what character they are, how big they are. Because first it was Ned, he was the main dude. They killed him like nothing. Then we thought it's gonna be Rob, right? Okay, Rob Stark, he's gonna be the guy. He's king of the North. We're gonna follow Rob through this thing. Maybe he'll end up on the throne. Boom, he's out the box. Catelyn's out the box. Like
He
they
killed
just
everybody.
did not give a
They just
fuck.
came in and just chopped everybody up. Yeah.
Or
Listen, it was better than The Walking Dead. I was like, dang.
fuck yeah.
But they just did it all in one episode. I was like, wow. Like
Yeah, man.
that
They
threw me for a loop, man. A lot
it's
of people were disturbed by that too. Remember, there were people who
mhm,
just they were disturbed by that. But I mean, it's TV. What can you do? A lot of people were just really, they were really, pissed. Some people were pissed. Some people, it was like it got. I think more people talked about that than they did the last episode of Sopranos. How Sopranos ended.
yeah,
But with Sopranos, you gotta really, really pay attention to see what happened. Because when the last episode of Sopranos, people didn't realize Tony got shot. Like they didn't realize he got moked out right there.
right.
And you gotta rewatch it to really see it. But if you really pay attention to what happened, it makes sense. And a lot of people are like, oh, what just happened? And the same thing with Game of Thrones with the wedding. People are like, oh, what just happened? You had people crying, babies crying. You had people didn't go to work the next day. It was just bad. It was bad.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It was like, you know, disturbing. Yeah, it was. It was disturbing. It was like
It really was, man. It was graphic the way they did it.
graphic.
Like the
Yeah,
whole thing was graphic. Yeah, it was. It
and
literally.
she
You
like when they killed Robin and Catelyn's just like, "Oh," cut the girl's throat and just like, "Oh." I was like, "Oh,
yeah.
wow, that's crazy, bro. That's deep. That's extra weird." But yeah, so who was all right, let me see. So Slade, you said Smaug is your favorite dragon of all time. Smaug's great. Desolation of Smaug, the meaning. Well, I know it's a book.
There's a
Yeah,
meaning
they
behind
killed
it.
him in the
He's
book that
right.
way. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
no, he's
meaning
right.
behind it.
Yeah, there's a meaning. The meaning behind the desolation of Smaug is okay. The town that lied, what was it, Rivertown? The area
Yeah.
surrounding Rivertown and leading up to the mountain that he was in,
Mhm.
that whole area was called the desolation of Smaug because
Yeah,
when
it
he
was
came,
a
remember how
desolate
he
place,
talked.
a dreary
Right,
waste
remember how
of ruin.
he talks about how he came and he destroyed everything. He set everything on fire. And
Yeah.
remember when they talk about the one guy's father trying to shoot him with the arrow? He did knock the scale off,
Yeah.
but he didn't kill him.
Mhm.
That day when Smaug decimated the whole area, that area was known as, if you look at it on the
Yeah.
token, I have a token map. I gotta break it out for us one day. On the token map, it's of the whole of that whole universe. It says the desolation of Smog. That whole area is called the
Right.
desolation of Smog, and
Right. I
it
know that,
just
but
it
I'm
just has
trying to
to
figure out
be.
I'm wondering what Slade's talking about.
I don't know. What did he say? He said that.
Yeah,
Do
he said,
we
"Do you
know
know
the
the
meaning?
meaning of it?" I
Oh,
mean,
that
I
is
know
the
it's a
meaning of it.
book. I know
Yeah,
it's
that
a
is the
play.
meaning of it. Yeah, a lot of people
Okay.
think it's just the name of the story or the book, but it's not.
Yeah,
It is the
no, no.
name of the story, but it has a meaning, and the meaning is what he did.
Yeah.
Um, when you read the book, it really goes into detail about how bad Smaug really decimated that area. Like nothing grew,
Yeah.
nothing
Laid
lived.
waste.
He laid
Raised it.
waste to the whole
Yeah.
area. And when they
Devastated it.
show
He
right
made
at
it
the end of
barren.
the yes, he did. At the end of
Yeah.
the first movie,
Unfit for
they show a
habitation.
bird. Right, they show a bird, come up, and the bird is, he's pecking on the rock, and the next thing you
Mhm.
know, you see something crush him. That's Smaug,
Yep.
because Smaug let nothing live that came into that area. So nothing came there. Nothing grew there. No animals. No nothing. He would go out and hunt them. He would go out and just blow fire. The townspeople they didn't mess with Smaug. That's why when Bilbo, when you watch the movie, the most prolific part of the movie is the most prolific part of the book. Is when
Mhm.
Smaug and Bilbo have that long conversation. That conversation right there is the height of the book. It's also
Yeah.
supposed to be the height of the movie. The way they talk to each other, the way Smaug explained to him, like, look, I'm the best thing since pockets on pants. There is no dragon better than me. There's no dragon stronger than me.
Mm-mm.
There's no dragon that has hotter fire than me. Like he breaks down, like, look, like little man, you don't know who you playing with. Like I'm Smaug.
Yeah.
Just the meaning of my name invokes fear in
Yeah.
everything living
So the
and dead.
meaning of desolation, the desolation of Smaug means he de what does he mean by desolation? Meaning, not just he didn't just burn the shit. He didn't just wreck it. He
He did it.
desolated it where you
Yeah,
couldn't grow nothing
he
there no
definitely
more. You can't live
you
there.
can
You
go.
it's
Yeah.
just wasteland.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, no animals even when you look at no animals even came there. Like no animals even came there to feed, nothing.
Right.
Because if they did, Smile would burn it. He would eat them. He would do anything. No one came near that mountain. And
That's
even when
his
you, that's his
desolation.
domain. Yes,
Yeah.
and that the decimation spot
That
was
was
his
his
domain.
desolation. Right, his
Yeah,
domain.
and he claimed it.
Yeah.
Even when Gandalf was talking to Thorin, and he was asking Thorin, like, look, like we need to go there. And one of the signs was that there would be birds there, like some birds would come there. And they saw birds. Someone saw birds there, and that was a sign that it was time to go because it was foretold that Smaug would die. He would befall an unnatural death. Smaug knew that,
Right,
but he just didn't know how it would come, when it would come, or
right.
where it would come from. And the mistake was his own. Was the fact that he left
The
that
Black
mountain,
Arrow.
yeah, to attack the town, and they just got him with a black arrow. This happened
Mhm.
again. He didn't know he had a missing scale,
Yeah,
but
he didn't know. Yep. You didn't know that the scale was knocked loose.
mm,
Yeah. Well, so another what I was saying that about them adapting this versus adapting Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, right, was adapted based on the Song of Ice and Fire, 5 books, more than 4,200 pages, right? In a span about 3 years worth of events in a timeline, but by comparison, the House of Dragon story is only about 250 pages,
that's not a
from the
lot.
fire. It's not much. And
Yeah,
so
that's not a
they
lot.
yeah, and so it's harder to adapt a series out of this little thing because the they could stick to the source material all they want, but there's just not that much source material, so they're gonna be making shit up it's in some, at some level, but apparently this show will be, more close to the source material than Game of Thrones was. So, it's gonna be very it's an ambitious project. Uh, Another thing is the adaptable story doesn't have much dialogue. That whole chapter, you know, again, this is from Fire and Blood, so it's like a telling of history. There's not a lot of talking. It's not a conversational, it's not a fiction novel. So, it's like a historical tome, right? So, they've got to make up the dialogue like in the tome where he says, this happened and that happened and that happened. Well, now the script writer has to create dialogue for those events, and that's a challenge. um and another thing is that this source is, this story is not objective. It's constructed as sort of a meta joke, right? Its cover page states that the story is written by a character living inside Westeros named Archmaester Gildane, and is, just transcribed by George R. R. Martin. But, and while readers could take everything that happened in the Song of Ice and Fire books as sacrosanct, the depictions in Fire and Blood technically came from an in-universe character with his own flaws and biases and interpretations, which could at points be wrong. In fact, Gildane, that the Archmaester Gildane, he even admits his limitations within the text, as Fire and Blood's fictional writer explains early in his tale of the Dance of Dragons. He says much of the story happened behind closed doors in the privacy of stairwells and council rooms and bedchambers, and the full truth of it will likely never be known. Well, that's the stuff they're going to have to invent and write and come up with. So, and hopefully they do what Filoni and Favreau did by having George Lucas on the set, right, as a sort of uh, 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 consultant. Hopefully they'll have George R. R. Martin as a consultant, and yeah, so some firsthand account exist. Some firsthand accounts exist. One from a septon, one from a collection of different maesters, and then of course one from the court jester Mushroom. But they, only offer limited perspectives. If the writer wasn't in the room, he can't be sure of what happened inside. So uh, I fucking can't wait to see what they come up with. As long as we've got George R. R. Martin, you know, involved close enough that they're not just crazily inventing shit. I have something kind of fun here. That was kind of cool here. I wonder if I can get. Okay, so I will share the screen then. Just takes a second, guys. Let me share my screen with you. Got to click like 7 things. All right. So I was really disappointed when I found out that this show was not going to be just the whole book of Fire and Blood. I was really kind of pissed. I was like really let down, totally disappointed, and just like almost not even. I was just like, oh fuck this. So the beginning of Fire and Blood starts out with Aegon the Conqueror, what we see here, and it tells the story of him leaving, Volantis, or um, fucking what's it called? Uh, 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 Valeria. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So leaving Valeria, coming to Westeros, conquering Westeros, conquering, and it talks about the families, the Baratheon house and the Starks and all the different houses of Westeros that were there already doing their thing. When Aegon came over with his dragons and you know, took over. So that whole story was so cool. And I was reading, Fire and Blood, getting prepared for the show. And I'm like a couple of chapters in. I'm like, man, this is fucking great. I can't wait to see all this shit. And then I found out, oh, the show's only going to be about Daemon Targaryen and Viserys the first. I hadn't even gotten to that part in the book yet. So I was like, who is even that? Like, you mean none of this is going to be in the book or in the show? So I fast forwarded, read the chapters with, Daemon Targaryen and Viserys and, the stuff the show's going to be about. And it's cool. But I guess I guess it's I guess it's like a more prosperous time and they wanted to show the height of the Targaryen, or maybe they could do more representation during this time period. Maybe there are some gay characters involved or something. I don't know. There's a reason, something like that, why they chose this specific. But so Aegon Targaryen, more commonly referred to as Aegon the Conqueror, was the first Targaryen to rule Westeros in Game of Thrones history and the founder of their dynasty. Born on Dragonstone, Aegon the First Targaryen conquered Westeros kingdoms with his dragon rider sisters Visenya and Rhaenys. And it was really cool because you had Aegon, you had Visenya, and you had Rhaenys, his two sisters, and they all three rode dragons, and they all three went and conquered shit. But they were also all three married. It was like a polygamous, incestuous relationship. So
Mm.
that's another reason why they might have said maybe they didn't want to do that story. Maybe they didn't want to have the whole thing about this brothers and his two sisters getting it on. Possibly, but and it was said that Aegon married Visenya, known as a fierce warrior, out of duty, and he wed his younger sister Rhaenys, notable for her beauty and love of the arts, out of desire. And Aegon's 37-year reign featured numerous battles with the House Martell on Dorne. So, if you guys remember from Game of Thrones, Dorne was all the way at the bottom. It was at the southernmost tip of Westeros. And that was the one of the 7 kingdoms that never bent the knee to Aegon. Never joined the 7 kingdoms or never sort of respected the king of the 7 kingdoms as their king. They said, no, we're our own thing. And as many times as Aegon and his dragons attempted to conquer that, area, he couldn't do it for many reasons. And a lot of it was strategy. Like the lords of Dorne would just desert a place. Like if they knew that the armies were coming to this town, they would desert the town. It would just be empty when the army got there, and there would be no one to fight. And they would do little shit like that and run around and hide. So that was a really cool sort of thing that I was hoping to see. And then so this is Aenys Targaryen the first. He's the second king of Westeros. Is notable for lacking the warrior prowess of his father and brother while being quicker to kindness and decision. Uh, he was the son of Rhaenyra. particularly connected to the Game of Thrones faith of the Seven. So he was like the very pious ruler. Then the third guy comes out, and again, really was looking forward to seeing Maegor the Cruel, the younger son of
Mm.
Aegon the Conqueror. Maegor seized the Iron Throne upon his brother's death after spending years in exile for his polygamous marriage with uh, Cerise Hightower and Alis Haraway. So Maegor continued to marry as a result of his previous wives never giving him children, and the king taking 6 wives by the end of his life. He continued to battle the High Septon and warrior sons, where he executed dozens of Septons before one would marry him to his next wife. When Aenys' eldest son, Jon Snow's historic namesake, Aegon Targaryen, announced his claim to the throne, Maegor slew him and his dragon, whereafter he'd placed Aenys' children, Jaehaerys and Alysanne, on Dragonstone and his mother's wards. Maegor kept Aenys' eldest surviving child, Viserys, with him at court, who he soon had tortured and killed when learning that his nephew and niece had escaped Dragonstone. Soon after, Maegor forcibly took his niece, Rhaena, for his wife, intending her daughter from a previous marriage to be his heir. In 48 AC, after Conquer, Jaehaerys announced his claim to the throne, with his sister Rhaena and many lords of Westeros joining his cause. Jaehaerys is the father of the king that is ruling during this new show. So we're getting there. So Maegor was soon found dead, seated on the Iron Throne, with his wrists slashed and throat impaled by the throne itself. Although, it's unknown who was responsible for his death. They sort of called it a suicide because he was also who slits their wrists and their own throat with the chair they're sitting on. But then we get to Jaehaerys. So Jaehaerys, first Targaryen, is gonna be the father of the current king when we get to the show. He had 3 children. He had Viserys, Daemon, and Aegon. Viserys becomes king. Daemon is going to be probably the main. I don't want to say the main character of this show, but maybe the main character of the show, or at least the main focus. But and then after the sudden death of Balon, Jaehaerys summoned the Great Council to decide the line of succession, with the lords ultimately naming Balon's eldest son, Viserys, his heir. Jaehaerys' 55-year-long, largely peaceful reign came to an end in 103 AC when he was 69. All right, so this is going to be the king of the show here, Viserys Targaryen, also the namesake of Daenerys' brother. So in Game of Thrones, remember Daenerys and her brother Viserys, the asshole that got the hot gold poured on his head, melted
Yeah,
gold.
yeah.
And so this was his namesake. He was named after this guy, his ancestor. And this is another early king, right? His name is Viserys the First Targaryen. Features in House of Dragon, played by Patty Considine. I don't know the name, but I recognize the face. I've seen him in other stuff. He ruled Westeros from 103 to 129, rode the dragon Balerion, who unfortunately died before seeing his dragon rider ascend to the Iron Throne. Viserys sadly never found another dragon, but that didn't stop him from being an influential ruler and one of the most significant in Westeros history. So his dragon died before he became the king, and then he never got another dragon. But I guess he didn't need one because, again, this is at the time where they're at the height of power, so their only enemies are other Targaryens. So they don't have to like lay waste to armies with their dragons right now. So I guess it kind of wasn't that big a deal. But then you've got so here's another character, Rhaenyra Targaryen. All right, she's going to be the daughter of Viserys and his first wife, Aemma. She's the half sister of Aegon II. The two competing for the Iron Throne plunged Westeros into destructive civil war, which, much like the events of Game of Thrones, ended up involving multiple claimants, both within the Targaryen family and without. She's portrayed by Emma Darcy in The House of the Dragon, with Millie Alcock playing her the younger Rhaenyra during scenes exploring her relationship with Viserys' second wife, Alicent Hightower. Okay, I think she's the one that's going to be bisexual. I know there's going to be a bisexual character, if not lesbian character, but and probably why they chose this period. And then Daemon, so he's going to be the sort of the main guy, the big, the big, knight, or whatever. But um, so his grandfather, the dragon rider Viserys, ascended to the throne. Or no, his father. Sorry, his grandfather Jaehaerys died. Varys, his father, rises to the throne. So Rhaenyra was officially named after his heir. Officially named his heir soon after, but his younger brother Daemon, played by Matt Smith in House of Dragon, considered the Iron Throne his birthright. The promo for House of Dragon features Daemon's claim to the Iron Throne heavily, and with a known name like Doctor Who's Matt Smith in the role, it's clear that Daemon Targaryen is a primary character in the Game of Thrones prequel. While they appear to be at odds in season one, Daemon and his niece Rhaenyra eventually reconcile their differences in the typical unsettling Targaryen way, interfamilial romance. So Rhaenyra was first wed to Laenor Valerion, while Prince Daemon had two daughters with his wife, Lena Valerion. After Rhaenyra and Daemon Targaryen's spouses died, the niece and uncle quickly wed each other. Rhaenyra and Daemon soon welcomed a son, Aegon the Younger. However, animosity between Rhaena and Alicent had become a full-blown schism within Targaryens between the Greens and the Blacks. Okay, the Greens are the Alicent's son Aegon II supporters, and the Blacks are Rhaenyra's supporters. Rhaenyra was decreed Viserys' heir when he died in 129 AC, but the Greens decided to support the claim of his eldest son Aegon II, thus leading to the Targaryen Civil War. So the Civil War is going to be against the Greens and the Blacks. So I guess they had like a green background on their sigil, and these guys had a black background on their sigil. Something like that is why they're the Greens and the Blacks. Now, Aegon II, I don't know if we're going to get to these guys, but so this is who comes after Daemon and Rhaenyra from the show. So who knows if we'll get to this point. I don't know how this show is going to work. If it's going to, I don't think they're just doing a one season show. I know they're not doing that dumb shit. This is not Disney Plus. So how are they going to continue this one chapter, these 250 pages with no dialogue, and stretch it into 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons? I don't know how they're going to do that. I hope they don't try to do that. That's just going to be a bunch of extra filler crap that no one's going to want, and shit that doesn't make sense that's made up by these. We don't want that. I hope what they do is either continue the story as it progresses from that point in Fire and Blood, or do some throwbacks to the earlier in the book or whatever. But please don't just try to do season after season about this same chapter of this book. Hopefully, if they don't, we'll get into these kings: Aegon II, Aegon III. Concluding Dance of Dragons, Aegon the Younger ascended to the Iron Throne after the death of his mother Rhaenyra and uncle Aegon II. Aegon's reign saw the unity of the Seven Kingdoms after the Civil War. Okay, so yeah, this could be a good way to continue that.
We hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm gonna watch it, but I'm gonna be hard pressed to see what they're gonna do with it. Like, I don't know, man. We just gotta see. I just gotta see, man. Because it's really not uh it's not what we're used to with Game of Thrones. It's just not what we're used to. So, it's an earlier time period.
Yeah.
But it is something that we were interested in. Everybody was interested in the dragons. And
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, it's just like Star Wars. We're interested in the prequels. We want to know what we want to see that. We want to see what we heard about in the show. It's like Star Wars, we heard about all this shit and we wanted to see it, and we got the prequels. So hopefully there's no Jar Jar Binks. Hopefully they picked great actors and great writers, and hopefully George R. R. Martin will be involved enough that they don't go too far out of the realm of what we're used to, what we want. And like you said, it is, a different time, but it is going to be in familiar places, that we know from the show. like King's Landing. We're gonna see all the same. We're going back to Westeros. Make no mistake. This is going to be a return to Westeros. For that, I'm excited. I can't wait to go back to Westeros because that's definitely what this is going to be. But there's it's not going to be Game of Thrones, and that's good.
No, no.
That's
But you
good.
know,
Don't try to
a
redo
lot of
that.
people, you know, but a lot of people they're gonna try to look at it like Game of Thrones. They're gonna
Oh yeah.
try to judge it
Mm-hmm.
like Game of Thrones, and you can't. You got it's its own entity.
Yeah. It's the only thing.
Got to judge it for what it is. It might start off a little bad, but end out good. It might start off a little slow, but then we
Might.
just love it. You know what I mean?
But
So
according to the people that have seen this first episode, they're not saying that. They're saying that this first episode was fantastic.
uh, as long as they get to the point, fear is that they're gonna drag it out, put too much story in it. Some story that we don't need. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Well,
that's my biggest fear. I really don't want to see that. I
yeah.
just want to get to the nitty gritty, get down to it. You know, like the
Well,
wedding. I mean, hook us up.
no. Yeah. Well, that's the good thing about this show is that it's pretty much going to start right in the nitty-gritty. Like it's taking place at the height of their power. Like shit's popping off, dragons are flying around. Like it's not going to be no slow build up. We've already seen Game of Thrones. Like we're not they don't need to fucking, surprise us with it's just they've got a lot to compete with, a lot to stand up to, a lot to be compared to with Game of Thrones. It's a lot of big shoes to fill, right? So I'm not personally, for one, definitely not gonna be like comparing this to Game of Thrones or like
Right.
expecting it to be just as good or the same. No, this is gonna be a different show, but that's gonna be okay. So House of the Dragon says, "Hello, how was the first chapter? The music, the people, and the special effects?" Yeah. Well, apparently House of the Dragon, it is awesome according to the people that got to see the sneak peek, according to George R. R. Martin. And thank you for gracing us with your presence. We're doing a show about you today.
Well, House and Dragon. Uh, we would like to bring you on here and ask you a couple questions because we
Yeah. Yeah, we got to
right
talk.
now we're guesstimating. We're talking
Yeah.
about it. We're guesstimating about it. We just want a good show. We want a good show. And right now we're giving our fans a little history, giving them a little little details that they might have missed that might help them understand it a little better.
Thank you, Corey.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and bringing them up to speed so that they can get ready for this, for this extravagant event that we're gonna have next week.
Absolutely.
We're all excited. We just want to know. Yeah.
And
We're
Slade,
excited.
the Mountain and the Viper, one of the best episodes. That's another one like that. That's another one of them shockers. Like I didn't think that dude was
Yeah.
gonna die, bro. I did not think he was gonna die like that. That was like I was like literally stunned for a second. Like he just wow, just crushed his head like this. Yeah. So that was crazy. But the 7 episodes that I listed in this podcast that you should watch before House of the Dragon, they're not my favorite Game of Thrones episodes. They're not the best Game of Thrones episodes. That's not why I'm saying those. They're specific to this show. They'll
To the
give you stuff.
dragons, yeah.
Yeah,
They'll give
they'll
you
give
the
you
yeah.
stuff for House of the Dragon to get you ready for House of the Dragon. So yeah, if you want to hear my favorite episodes, that's a whole nother list. But that's a whole nother list.
Have you ever read any of the books?
Read them all. Got them right there. Yeah, yeah. I'm all in, bro. I've read all the books. I even got. Let me show you this. I even got a fucking side. This one I'm rereading right now is this is the last book in the series as he's written so far. There's 2 more books that he's writing that come out after this. So right now there's 5 books there's gonna be 7. He thinks. He's pretty sure he's gonna end it at 7. Um, he's been writing book 6 for fucking forever now and keeps telling us that it's gonna be done by the he was supposed to be done with this book that he's writing right now before Game of Thrones even got to, like, season 6. Like, he was supposed to be done with that book back then. All this stuff keep getting, so he's got all these setbacks, so he's still working on The Winds of Winter. That's the 6th book, but this is what I was gonna show you. This is dope. This is what I'm fucking with right now. This is The World of
Oh,
Ice and
Fire
Fire.
Ice. Yeah,
Yeah,
Fire Ice. Man,
and that look, it's got the embossed Targaryen emblem. I love it. It's got the like it looks like it's a all old like an old tome. You know what I mean? It's got these great illustrations and the pages look all old. See? They look like they're like all old and worn. I
that's
love it.
dope.
Yeah, I love
I
that.
like that.
Yeah, and you got, it's just everything in here is like, the histories of the houses, and you've got the lineages, like right there, that's the Targaryen lineage, like the whole
Wow.
family tree and shit. It's very in depth. You got maps and yeah, man. If you're into the show, man, like I mean the universe, pick this up. It's a $50 book. I think they make a cheaper paperback version, I
Why would you
believe.
want that?
But I yeah,
Unless you want
exactly.
to carry it around in your back pocket. But other
Yeah.
than that,
That shit looks, I mean, it's just dope. And
right,
then
I
the
want that.
cover, bro, the cover is like it's like almost like it's got padding in it. It's thick. It's like it's almost I swear it's like a thick, like almost padded kind of cover. I love
Like
this
a
book.
pillow.
Yeah, like a pillow. Yeah. But yeah, he's also got a couple of other books that are like like spin-offs. This is another spin-off that they're going to be making a show about. A Dunkin' Egg is called. It's called The Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Um uh and it's about Aegon and Duncan uh the Tall. They call it Dunkin' Egg. Um and it's dope too. It's got, some illustrations, but for the most part, it's just a cool story that takes place in Westeros. So yeah, trust me, bro. I got the main books. I got them spin-off books. I got look at this. You're gonna like these too. Yeah, you're gonna love these too. So the book right here, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, is about the Hedge Knight, and this is George R. R. Martin's The Hedge Knight graphic novel. Yeah, so these are the two trade paperback graphic novels, The Hedge Knight, and that's about Duncan Egg. And then you got Game of Thrones, the actual hardcover graphic novel of the actual show and the books, and you can see it's gorgeously illustrated. And a few of the characters look so the characters in these graphic novels are drawn the way they're described in the novels. They're not drawn like the characters you see in the show. That's why I really want
Mm.
to get this. Yeah, because um, the characters in the show look very different from the way they are described in the book. One of the biggest differences is Tyrion. So Tyrion Lannister, the dwarf, he's in the show. I mean, he's Peter Dinklage. He's handsome and just like But in the books, he's hideous. And you remember in the show where he got that scar across his face? Well, in the book, he gets his whole nose chopped off. So he's walking around with no nose, like holes in his like half a nose. I think it's like a half a nose and then just a hole in his face. So he's like a really, ugly little motherfucker. and that yeah, so, like, there's a lot of difference. There's a lot of character differences in the way that they looked, um, and so these are really cool. And this is actually, 4 of them, hardcover graphic novels, and all 4 of these are actually the graphic novel adaptation of the first book, A Game of Thrones. So there's 4 graphic novels that make up that one. I don't know if they ever did the graphic novels for the rest of the books. I'm sure they are working on them or did. Um, but yeah, I'm guessing if they're for a book, then we're gonna be looking at like 25 of these to get the whole series. But I'm not worried about it. But that's a shite ton of content. Yes, it is.
It
Looks like a
is.
leaper. I agree. I agree. Yeah, man.
Like
Yeah,
I
you
said, he needs those.
need those. I needed them too, bro. You got to get them, bro. You got to get them, and you can find them on eBay. I mean, I'm sure. Like, I probably that's probably where I got
How many of them do you have altogether?
them. Graphic novels or books?
Graphic novels. Or just books on Game of Thrones, period.
Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The main 5 books in paperback. Then I've got the two big hardcover editions of 2 of those paperbacks. So that's 7, and then I got a large print of the first book, so that's 8. Then I got the 2 graphic novels, that's 10. The 4 hardcover graphic novels, that's 14. 15 with the Duncan Egg Hedge Knight book, and 16 with the big Song of Ice and Fire. So 16 books I got.
That's almost a library. So
Yeah,
2 more books and you'll have a library.
yeah. And you see this big that curtain, right? I don't know, you can't tell, but that's a huge Game of Thrones tapestry right there on the wall
Oh,
behind.
hanging behind there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you can kind of see tips of dragon and wolf heads and shit. But yeah, it's huge. Yeah, man, I'm all into that shit, bro. Game of Thrones is my favorite shit. I'm gonna tell you, I just finished watching the whole show again. Like, I just rewatched the whole show, and
Mhm.
almost as soon as I was done with it, I was fiending to like watch it again. Like, like I was like ready to go back to episode 1 and start it over again. Like, that's how good that shit is, man, and rewatchable. The
I
if
get
you
it.
if
Sort of like me in Star Trek. I can go back and watch them all.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so if you were a fan of Game of Thrones and you haven't watched it in a while, or maybe you only watched it once, go watch it again. You'll love it. Like, it's better the second time. It's better the third time. Um, I like it every time I watch it. Even better, I find out new shit, mention, notice something new or whatever. It's dope. It's a lot of content. You've got 8 seasons. The last 2 are pretty short. Well, the last one is really short. I think it's only 7 episodes. It's like half, but you like Game of Thrones like I do the Dark Tower. Ah, ah. Nope. Yeah. Let's see what I got on the Dark Tower for you. Uh, yeah, I'm not like you, or I'm not like Game of Thrones like I am with the Dark Tower, but I got the Wizard in the Glass. That's number 4, book 4. I got The Wind Through the Keyhole, Dark Tower novel, and The Gunslinger, Dark Tower book 1. And I got a
And
bunch
they
of
do a
Dark
movie. They do a
comics.
movie about the gunslinger. Wasn't that what?
Yeah,
Didn't it?
they did.
It's
They did. I
Idris
had
Elba, right?
Yeah, Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. Yeah, and I had the 2 Funko Pops for them too, but I don't know where they are. Wizard and Glass is your favorite. That's Yeah, it's huge. Jesus. I have not gotten to this one yet. This is the fourth book in the series. I own it, but I have not gotten to it yet. But yeah, these are big epics. What do you say? I learned a lot from Game of Thrones lore from a channel called Quinn's Ideas. He goes into a lot of it. I'll check that out. Um, yeah, it's a lot of content though. You've got these epic fantasy. That's what this is. That's the genre. Is epic fantasy,
Okay.
where there's volumes of books or whatever. So I know that the Stephen King Dark Tower. This is 3 books, but I think there's like 7, right, Norin? Well, that the drawing of the 3 is Ty. Oh, the drawing of the 3, yeah, yeah. I know of the books. Like I've heard, I know all the names of them and shit. But you know what? This though. The Gunslinger Dark Tower #1, revised and expanded throughout with a new introduction from the author. Yeah,
Yeah, because
that's
Dark Tower had a comic. It had everything. They made that.
mhm.
It's real popular.
Yeah, yeah. And Stephen King, he lived like 30 minutes away from where I lived in Florida.
Get out.
Yeah, right there. Books 567 fall off. Books 5, but 1234 are extraordinary. You lost me, man. What are we talking about now? Oh, books 5, 6, and 7. Yo, where's my where's my what's we call it? Slade, where's my my moderators? Come on now. Let's moderate. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Moderate. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Got you. I got you, man. I was like, what? 567 and 1234. Duh. 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm an idiot. My bad. Yeah, man. Yeah, epic fantasies, bro. You can go on for days, man. Just exploring and talking about Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, mm, Dark Tower, Game of Thrones. There's many, bro. I mean, there's many, many, many.
Wizard
Okay.
of Glass is one of those stories.
Yeah, Roland's the main character that Idris Elba played. The character Idris Elba played in the movie. That's Roland.
I didn't get that movie, man. I
No?
watched it. I just, bruh, it was. I was excited about it because I knew what it. I knew I knew what it was. I didn't
Yeah.
really. I've never really read. I think
Yeah.
the only thing I owned about the Dark Tower is the comics. That's it. On a
Yeah.
couple of those, and I read them, and they were pretty good. But I was excited to see them. Something live action. I was like, all right. When it came, I was like, huh? I just didn't get it.
Well, I will say the movie tries to encapsulate 7 novels of material. And so yeah, it becomes very like what? Because there's so much, dude, 7 books. And yeah, Stephen King's all his books are linked. It's all a universe. I mean, I'm not bullshitting y'all. I'm here. Look, I'm super proud of my novel, my library, as much as I am of my comic collection. Um, all those paperbacks on that bottom row are Stephen King books. The whole bottom row, and from Pet Cemetery, Cujo, Cell, Thinner, Roadwork, The Long Walk, Running Man, Insomnia, Doctor Sleep, Needful Things, It, Tommy Knockers. They all connect, and they all there's a town in Maine, well, a fictional town that he always uses, and they always go back to that town. The monster, it from it. that's actually an entity from the Dark Tower novels. And
Oh, okay, okay.
there's like in little tiny ways he'll yes, Derry's the name of it, and yeah, it's in Maine. So Derry is the city that
So Nora, have you read these Dark Tower novels? Have you read all of these?
yeah, he said he's into Dark Tower like I'm in Game of Thrones.
Oh wow. Cause I listen, man. Cause when it comes to Dark Tower, I'm lost, bro.
Yeah, he
Like I
said, yeah,
said, the
you can't do
movie.
Dark Tower in one movie. They tried to ultimate failure. Yeah, you can't put it in one movie. They should have done a trilogy at least. Or they should have done a show with multiple seasons, 13 episodes a season. That's how you can make the Dark Tower. You can't do it in a movie. I love shows, bro. I love these new shows because they're making stories that you couldn't put in a movie, and where you can watch something
Right.
for 2 hours and it's over. I got 7 seasons, 10 episodes, 70, 80 episodes. That's like 70 or 80 hours of a story. So I love this time that we're in as far as, media for movies and shit. The actor Idris Elba was excellent. It was all horrible script. Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I mean,
Yeah,
the special
acting.
effects.
Yeah, listen, the acting was fine. Special effects was good. Um, I just didn't get it. I just was like, huh? I was like,
Yeah.
what? Like, what's like? I just didn't get it. It was
He
like watching that movie with Hugh Jackman. What was that movie where he was traveling through
Oh yeah.
time? I just didn't get that,
Yeah.
bro. I didn't get it, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, that shit
I
was
forget the
fucking
name of that joint. Everybody know. Anybody in chat knows the
I
name of
know the
that
one you
movie.
yeah,
Let
I
us
know
know, bro.
yeah, I know exactly the movie you're talking about. It's like The Magnificent? Nah, that's the
Bro, it
Prestige.
was just.
Nah, but yeah,
I just didn't get it, bro. I tried.
well,
I'm not
so
even
Dark
gonna lie.
Tower is it's it's Stephen King's answer to Lord of the Rings, right? He wanted to do an epic like Lord of the Rings in a fantasy world, but he wanted to create his own fantasy world, not elves and dwarves and men and wizards like that, like in medieval times. He wanted to take it place, have it take place in our time,
In real time, right? No,
right?
that part I
But
got.
have yeah,
That part I got, and I thought was
but
dope.
there's other dimensions. So there's
Right,
these other dimensions that they go to. So the
right.
fantasy aspect is when they go to these other dimensions
The dimensions,
and these other
right?
world. Yeah.
Yeah, I just
And
didn't get. I just like when they tried to bring that to the big screen, it didn't translate well for me. Maybe for
it,
somebody else, but
it
for
didn't.
me, I
It
was
didn't.
like, huh? Like when I read the comics, I was cool
You
with it. I
ain't
was like,
wrong.
okay. I was
Yeah.
like, all right, this is all right. But I
Yeah.
never read any of the books, anything like that. But I
Yeah.
did get it when I read the comics. But when you brought it to the big screen, I'm not even gonna lie. I'll admit it here, live on air. I was damn it lost. I was lost. I was
You are
lost in the
not.
middle of the forest. I was
There's
in the
not
middle of the forest in the middle of the night with
word.
no torch,
Nope. No
no
flashlight.
light, no fire, no flashlight, no.
No
I didn't
breadcrumbs.
know nothing. No breadcrumbs, no string, no
Uh,
nothing. And I
raw.
watched it. I'm not even gonna lie. I watched
Yeah.
it from beginning to end. When I got done, I was just perplexed. I was like, huh? Like, what just happened? And
You're not
why?
alone.
I'm not alone in it. Bro,
You're not
I
alone.
was, I was literally just thrown off by it, bro.
It's
Couldn't
that.
understand.
Yeah. I mean, it was foolish to try. Foolish to try. I can't believe I just don't know what went through the mind of someone who said, "Let's adapt these 7 novels into a movie." You can't just this is a stupid project to try and take on from the beginning. If you had made it into a show, would have been fucking perfect.
Right. But they just, I hate when they try to bring things to the screen that don't
Translate.
translate well.
Yeah.
Like like the movie Hugh Jack didn't translate well. It literally just didn't like in the first Punisher movie, didn't translate well.
Mhm.
Um could they have done a better job? Yes. Did they? No. Palm trees in New York, still don't get it. Um but
What is it?
palm trees in New York. Because remember they
Oh,
show him riding a motorcycle
yeah,
because Punisher's
the
supposed to be in New
camp,
York.
yeah,
And,
Vincent
they, and
Camp.
it just yeah, it just look, it just does some stuff just don't do. You know, I understand you might have a vision. Iron Fist when they did the Netflix special, it didn't translate well because the director wasn't willing to cooperate with the source material.
Right. Was it no one tells a story like King? Can't describe how well the story is written, but take my word, it's one of the greatest stories written.
I believe it.
You're right. No, I know you're right. Like King makes you feel like you're there in that world. Listen, I've like everybody else, watched all the Stephen King movies and all of that, but it wasn't until I started to read his books that I realize how dope his stories are. Because when they translate his books to movies, it just 9 times out of 10 they're whack movies. But when they get a good one like Misery or or something like that or Pet Cemetery and they really hit it,
Or it.
it's or it eh, hit or miss. I don't know. It was well the newer
The
it was better.
original was good.
Original was
The
better.
the
It was
the
it was
the
it was
original the
they
original
both
was
had
good. The,
yeah.
the new one was better for this time.
Hero, yeah. Yeah, it was,
But people don't have attention spans like they did back then. So for now, for this newer generation, that's good because they need two parts. For our generation, we watched it in one part in one long movie, and that was great for us. So
yeah.
I get it. You know,
But no, reading his books. Okay, I'll tell you. I want to recommend this right here. I want to recommend this to y'all. Let me see if I got another one. Dude, I have so many Stephen King books. All right, that's that. That's that. Let me see. Can I find the third one? Yeah, no, that's Doctor Sleep. Finders Keepers. Okay, so this is a trilogy that I think they did. They made a show or a movie or something. It was a show, and it was like really underground almost. Like I don't know where the fuck they showed it, man. It was like weird. I watched it online. I forget what network on it. Some weird thing. But anyway, it's called Mr. Mercedes. And
mm,
then End of Watch and Finders Keepers. I think Finders Keepers is second. So it goes Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, End of Watch. Mr. Mercedes starts out and there's this guy that drives into a crowd of people and just kills them with his Mercedes. Um but then there's like this whole mind control thing and telekinesis and or telepathy. It's dope. Really fucking good. Had me captivated, bro. But like that's the thing. Stephen King, like Noren's saying, it's something about the way he writes, man. It's so immersive, bro. You just get into that shit. And it's like it's not like the movies. It's not like his movies. The Stephen King movies are not like the books, bro. Like it's hard to explain. Just like Noren said, it's really kind of hard to explain how well
I
it's
think
written. But
I
I'll tell
think
you
I
one.
can. It's because in a movie you have a director, and they're always gonna want to put their if we all read the same book, well, visually we'll all have a different concept of it, but the
Right,
story in our heads will be the same. And I
right,
think that's the problem. When you read the book, you have to go by someone else's visualization, but the
right,
story is the same, but their visual representation of it is different.
right. Yeah, I mean that's definitely some of it. That's definitely part of it. Just the writing, the script, the screenwriters, the
No,
directors.
I believe you.
It's
Yeah,
gonna be
because
different. I don't know. It's just something about the way he writes is it's not like you would expect a horror writer. Like he's not a horror writer. Like
no,
that's what's so
no,
good about his books is that he's not a horror writer. He just happens to write books that are fucking scary sometimes or suspenseful and horrific, but he's a writer first and then he writes some horror, but he writes some fantasy, he writes some drama, he writes like all kinds of books he has, and it's just that they only talk about the horror stuff. But I mean, even movie like Stand By Me, like
it's great.
he, yeah, and
That was great.
yeah,
I've actually read like think I read like half of that book. It was good, bro. It's really good.
Yeah, really
Like,
good.
you know what it is? It's the way he describes the characters and the detail that he goes into with like like. All right, if you ever read anything about Victor Hugo, people say Victor Hugo gets boring because when he writes, he goes into the characters. He dives deep. And when I say that, I
Yeah.
mean like off the Empire State Building deep, and then
Right.
and then he gets into it. And after a while, some people will get bored reading that. They'll be like, "Oh man, come on, can we just move on with the story?" But
Right.
part of his writing, the genius of his writing, is the breakdown of the character
Mm-hmm.
because that's what progresses the story. And what happens is he'll break the character down so much, he'll start to tell the story at the same time.
It's
And the
like,
next thing you know, you're like, right, you're like, huh, what happened?
mm-hmm.
So with Stephen King, it's like when he writes, it's like you're there. Like to me, when I read his book, it's like you're there. Like
Yeah.
you're there watching what he's writing, but it's like he's explaining it, but you're there watching it, but it's hard to explain it. But I do
Yeah.
like it. I do like it, and I see why a lot of people are drawn to it. And I
Yeah.
read a couple of, a couple of chapters out of a couple of books just for the simple fact that people always talked about how great it was. I just wanted to see. I read and I was impressed.
Right. Um, N is it. So Noah Rad just mentioned this book, N, and I've not read it, and I'm really pissed now because you say it's dope, one of your favorites. I just sold that shit. I had the graphic novel. It was a hardcover graphic novel version of N. I don't know if they. You said it has a motion comic, so I don't know if it's actually a book. Okay, it is just a short story in the book just after sunset. Gotcha. Yeah, so they made a comic with it, but yeah, it's supposed to be dope. Supposed to be. Um, Also, we're gonna get a Jon Snow sequel show. Um, so this is the House of the Dragon is the prequel show, and they're also developing a sequel show that probably will take place right where Game of Thrones left off, where Jon Snow and the wildlings are walking north of the wall, and he's going north of the wall to theoretically or assumably, live with the wildlings north of the wall. And
Mm,
right, so that show is gonna like take place from there and go, see what Jon Snow's been up to. Um, I don't know if it has a title, um, but it's not going to be an adaptation of any of George R. R. Martin's work, though, because
mm,
um, it's not like he didn't write this book. But it's a Game of Thrones sequel about Jon Snow with Kit Harington playing Jon Snow, a direct follow up from the show, probably, but Jon Snow's ending isn't one that obviously screams more to come. He's walking north to the wall where we know that there's no more Night King, there's no more White Walkers, so I don't even think there's any giants left. So what's he gonna do up there? Like he's gonna live the relaxing life, sit back and ice fish. We don't know what could possibly.
mm,
So yeah, but it does also come with some potential, and more than a little intrigue. Like what is beyond the wall now? What are the threats that could come from beyond the wall? We know there's no ice spiders and Night King and all of that. And I don't even think they need the wall anymore. The wall itself is now an obsolete thing, because it was to protect from the kingdom from the wildlings and the snarks and grumpkins and things like that. They go bump in the night. But now that they know that shit is gone, the wall is just there. So how will John cope with life among the wildlings again? So far from his family in Westeros, what scars does he carry? Is he gonna find a new wildling, love interest? You know, and the Jon Snow sequel can I think it can provide greater depth to Game of Thrones the Game of Thrones character himself, like, but also make an impact in other ways, because it can explain confusing elements, like, why does Westeros even need a Night's Watch? You know,
Mm,
they said that at the end of the Game of Thrones, he's like, is there even still a Night's Watch? Like, why? We killed the Night King, there's nothing there. And the answer was, Westeros will always need a place for, outcasts and whatever. But really, like, what are they doing there? You send the outcasts to the wall. What are they doing there? What would the Night's Watch do? So these are good questions that we, and optimistically, kill perhaps the worst theory of Game of Thrones ending, that Daenerys Targaryen was resurrected. After Jon killed Daenerys, Drogon picked her up and flew away with, her body. He was last seen over in Essos. The theory went that Drogon was taking Daenerys to a red priestess, such as Kinvara, um, that we saw in season 6, who would bring her back to life. By nature of being a direct sequel to Game of Thrones, the Jon Snow spinoff would surely have to reckon with this rumor, with, at least what did happen to her. So that could be another great thing that we could get from there. But Jon Snow sequel can confirm that she wasn't resurrected, because her being resurrected couldn't just be an event that happens off screen and viewers never learn of it, right? It would irrevocably change Game of Thrones' ending and future. Its final villain back alive, which would once again risk throwing open the power struggle within Westeros, should she return. And there's a lot of people in Essos that are aware of what Jon Snow did and hate Jon Snow and want to kill Jon Snow. Like, he's known in the eastern, he's known outside of Westeros, because Daenerys was a huge, queen in Marine and Astapor and Young Kai. And the peoples there, all the slaves that she freed, are loyal to her, and they know Jon Snow killed her. So whether she's resurrected or not, there could be forces, armies, people, sorcerers, magic users, anybody over there that's, planning to kill Jon Snow, or, if she is resurrected, that would be her new army that she could come back with, which I hope they don't do that. I hope that, but even if she didn't, and had decided there was nothing but pain and suffering for her in Westeros, it's still something those in Westeros would be able to find out about. King Bran the Broken is effectively his own master of whispers. He doesn't really need one. He doesn't need little birds. He can just, three-eyed raven it, rather than, ill-defined power, see a lot of what's going on in the present and the future. And Drogon himself, even if she was resurrected or not, there's still this giant dragon who knows Jon Snow, knows what he did, loyal to Daenerys. He didn't take vengeance on Jon Snow because Jon Snow is a Targaryen. And something about the Targaryens' blood, something about their lineage, the dragons, I guess, sort of know that these are Targaryens. And I almost think Drogon was like, that's Targaryen shit. I stay out of it. You know, even though I'm pissed at you for doing that, I know that's between you guys, and I respect that kind of thing. So there's no telling where it could go, but for the sequel in particular, it would need to address that. And given that the show will be focused on, so centrally on Jon Snow, there, then such a monumental reversal of the act that landed him in this position, an act of not only queen slaying, but of killing the woman that he seemingly loved, or at least thought he loved, would be the single biggest impact on his entire story. Thus, if it's not in the show, which presumably won't be, barring a major shock, then it would all but confirm Daenerys is truly dead. And the theory never fully made sense, even as a means to find some hope for those disappointed in Daenerys's ending. Her story was over, as was that of the Lord of Light, right? And Drogon departing with her body was very clear in its meaning and symbolism as to putting a full stop on that. And Jon Snow may know nothing, but his sequel can prove that much at least. Because if you're disappointed about the way Daenerys ended up in the show, you weren't paying attention. You weren't watching the show, because there are clear points where you see Daenerys getting more and more unhinged from reality, and you see her getting less and less empathetic and a little bit more sociopathic. It's gradual, but if you watch it, it's very clear. They're very distinct moments, and it's not subtle at all. But just like Daenerys, just like her character, we were caught up in her being the savior. So we were just, she's the savior, so whatever she does is right. And that's how Daenerys's mind worked. She's gonna
Mm-hmm.
save the world. So whatever I
Mm.
do is right because I'm the savior.
I'm the
So
savior, right?
she's infallible, and that's not a good thing. She doesn't let's see, Nornrad, I don't want to sound stupid here, but how deep do the books get into the actual lore of the dragons? I got confused. They have dragon blood or something, but I never understood how. So the books don't really get into the lore of the dragons as much because the dragons are a thing of history. They do though describe, I mean, they do give you the names of all the dragons, and give you stuff like that, like real matter of fact, like this dragon was ridden by this person, and this person had this dragon and that dragon, and this dragon lived this long, and here's what this dragon did, and then it died. So yeah, there is like a little history of the dragons, but it's more historical than legend, than lore or mystical, or really like a good, thing like that. What you just said is the story of Dune. Don't follow zealot leaders blindly. Basically, exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. There's zealots, and they're following their own self blindly in a way. Like they know that they're right. No matter what they do, they're right. So in their mind, they're never doing wrong. They're never evil. They're never the bad guy. When she's laying waste to a city, burning children alive, she's right. And that's it was inevitable. Like I admit, I was at first kind of shocked, like, oh shit, she's doing this. Like, whoa, wait a minute, what? And then, but as I'm watching it, I'm like, no, but that tracks. That tracks, and this all makes sense. So while I do agree with the critics that the whole Night King thing was definitely too short, shouldn't have just ended in a battle at Westeros in one episode. That should have been stretched over a fucking season, in my opinion. That should have been a whole season, that battle that we'd been building up to season after season after season. This is going to
Mm.
be the big fucking big event, and the Night King and the new wind. And another thing, like winter is coming, and it was supposed to be the new winter was going to be here, and we had this really long summer because in Westeros, in Game of Thrones, seasons are not quarterly. Like it's not, you don't get all 4 seasons each year. You'll get 9 years of summer, then like a 7-year winter, like a 5-year fall, right? So it doesn't make sense planetarily and scientifically at all, but that's just how it works. And so, there was supposed to be this big night, this, and this big winter was supposed to be here, and it was supposed to be. So I don't know, man. They really botched the ending. I do agree. But as far as people that are a big complaint, like saying Daenerys shouldn't have ended up that way, it was inevitable that she was going to end up that way. There was no other way for her to end up. Mhm. You know, do I agree with them having her burn all the kids? And I mean, listen, again, everything they did in the final season of Game of Thrones, I agree with. I just don't agree with how they crammed it all together in such a short time. So my big complaint is that they rushed it. You know, for some David Benioff and DB Weiss, the two showrunners and writers for Game of Thrones, I couldn't imagine how they would be fed up. Like they're sick of it. I'm tired of Game of Thrones. Let's just fucking get this over with. I can't imagine feeling that way, being involved with such an amazing thing. But what happened was they thought they were about to write the new Star Wars movie. And they had gotten, in talks and but then they ended up not getting the job because of some shit they did. And then, they lost out on that. So I think that they foolishly rushed through the end of Game of Thrones because they thought they were going to be riding high and about to do Star Wars and blah, 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 blah. They haven't done shit since. And if they had taken their time and finished it correctly and given us the ending that we deserved, their career, I think, would have been, set. It was fucking foolish. It could actually be possible on a planet that always faces its sun or rotates slowly. This is true. This is true. So, yeah, that's very, very true. I guess it just doesn't work on Earth. But again, assuming that it's Earth. Because it's not Earth, right? It's a made up place. So, yeah, you're right. Could be the way that planets are orbiting. But yeah, man, I was like, what happened to Winter? Because like at the end of Game of Thrones, when they're sitting there in the dragon pit, like deciding who's gonna be who, it's fucking like broad daylight, like summer. Like I'm like, I don't know. So who knows? I think it was just foolish that they botched that, man. But I think House of the Dragon will be a great,
You think
refreshing
they'll
way.
fix it? Is the question.
Well,
You think they'll fix it?
what the season the last season of Game of Thrones? You mean like
Yeah.
reshoot it, redo it, rewrite it?
Nah, like I don't know, like put something out in another
The only way they could
Game of
fix it is to
Thrones.
reshoot it.
You know what I mean? Like take it like a spinoff and then
Mhm.
fix it. Like do something to
Or like
fix it to
retcon
show
what
that.
happened.
Yeah, like show
Well, that's
something
the
other
thing.
than.
Well, that's the thing with the Jon Snow, what do you call it, sequel show, because that's what that show will do is shit like that. Retcon things, fix shit, whatever. I was wondering, could there be like a king dragon or something? The dragons don't have like a hierarchy, amongst each other that no, I don't think he did. He didn't give them anything like that. And they're not like Smaug. They're not talking dragons, which I think dragons should talk. I do. I think dragons should talk. I just think that's part of what a dragon should do. It's not a dinosaur. It's not a lizard. It's a fucking magical being. It's a dragon. Let it talk. But anyway, but these dragons are more like horses. They're more like big tanks. They're more like big giant, you know, flying mounts. They're not, yeah, like Smaug, right? Like a Smaug, right? Yeah. But no, they're so I don't think that they have like a thing like that, you know. And not to mention later in the story, the dragons are all dead. By the time Game of Thrones starts, there hasn't been dragons for hundreds of years. Some people don't believe they ever existed, but the people who know they existed, like the people that lived in King's Landing and stuff and saw the skulls of the dead dragons in the throne room, or where they ended up moving them and stuff like that, they knew. And like, they talk about in Game of Thrones how the last dragon that lived was only as big as a cat, and like the
Wow.
one before that was like as big as a dog, and like they were just getting smaller as the generations went because they were in captivity. They kept them in this thing called the dragon pit, and once they started putting the dragons in this stable, because like the dragons were originally just, they do what the fuck they want and go where they want and do what they want unless they're to be ridden in war. But then they start putting them in the stable, like a dragon stable called the dragon pit, and that's what stunted their growth. and stunted their evolution, and then they ended up just getting smaller and smaller and smaller until they just died off.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah,
But we love dragons. So even the
yeah,
one, even the ones that sound like Sean Carter.
yeah. Well,
So, but
here's
I'm
something.
excited for it. I'm
I am.
excited for it. I really am. I really am. And also too, we need something new to watch, man. They didn't cancel all the WB shows, and we need
Yeah,
something
no.
else. We
I've
need
been
something new. It's time. Yeah, we need something new right
every
now,
night. I'm
man. I
looking for
mean,
something to watch, bro, and it ain't shit.
it's nothing on, right? You
Yeah.
know, they canceled every show. Everything's getting canceled. Everything's season is ending. It's time for a new spin. It's time for a new run. It's time for a new 7-year run. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
get us some new content, but good
Absolutely.
content. Yeah, not nothing like Obi-Wan. We don't want anything like
No, we don't need
no,
that shit.
we don't want that. Keep that.
5 questions that we still want to know from Game of Thrones. Let's see if I don't know the answers to these. Let's see. Why was Jon Snow actually brought back to life? The Lord of Light is the closest thing to a real god in Game of Thrones. Melisandre and Thoros both claim that the Lord gave them the gift of resurrection. Well, Melisandre didn't claim that. She actually didn't think she could do it. She tried it and it worked, allowing the two to revive. And actually, Thoros doesn't claim that the Lord gave them the gift or the power. He said he just asks Lord of Light to do it, and the Lord of Light does it. He has no power. Um, Allowing the two to revive Jon Snow and Beric Dondarrion respectively. In regards to Beric, he was kept alive to fulfill his purpose of saving Arya so he could successfully kill the Night, so she could successfully kill the Night King. But why was Jon Snow brought back? Some fans theorize Jon was revised simply to stop Daenerys' world's conquest or inspire Arya to return to Winterfell and defeat the Night King, but none of these feel particularly satisfying given how much importance the show places on Jon coming back in the first place. It would be one thing if Jon defeated the Night King by himself, like the series was building up to. Thank you. But as is, he's just a man who comes back and stabs his lover in the heart. Um, well, first of all, George R. R. Martin has not written Jon Snow coming back to life yet. That's something they did in the show that has not yet happened in the books. The book that Martin is currently writing, Winds of Winter, is presumably when Jon Snow would come back to life if he's gonna. But at the end of A Dance of Dragons, he died. He's dead. So I don't even know if they did that just for the show. If George R. R. Martin plans to do that, if he does, and I hope he does, and it would make sense. But as to why, the show and their reasonings and their shit that they did at the last season, there is no definitive answers, and there is because it was just foolishness. um, why will Martin do it? We have to wait and see. Why did Arya become a faceless man? Why did she even become a faceless man? I thought because she thought it was dope. I mean, she was a tomboyish. She was a girl that wanted to be a warrior. She wanted to be a knight, and she first learned sword fighting from this guy called a water dancer, who was a sword fighter that uses like more of like a fencing, like lightweight sword, and maybe leather armor, very light armor, not at all, and move fluently. And then she ends up meeting um, uh, Jack and Hagar, and you know sees what he does as a faceless man, and is like, well, shit, that's dope. I want to do that. But Arya spent a long time training to become a faceless man in Bravos, having left Westeros in season 4 and only returning at the end of season 6. At the House of Black and White, Arya honed her abilities and used her new talents to kill Sir Maren Trant and later Walder Frey, the man responsible for her brother and her mother's deaths at the Red Wedding. I mean, why the writer had her do it? Because she'd be a much more capable assassin. She's a little girl, so she's not gonna be a big warrior anytime soon. But as a faceless man, she can be an assassin. She can get into places disguised as someone else. Being a faceless man is basically like Mystique. She can just morph and to become anybody she wants to become. In the show, or they're literally cutting off the person's face, peeling the first person's face off, and then through some magic, when they put that face on, it turns them into whoever they are trying to portray themselves as. So it's basically like the perfect disguise. I think you have to be the same kind of build as that person though. Like she's got to use other short people. Like she's not going to become tall.
Oh, not like a
But
Harry Potter type thing. I see what you
right. Now by the last two
mean.
seasons,
But
everything
they can
seemed to
disguise
indicate
their face, but not her build. That's
right.
smooth. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Um, which I don't know because the guy, the master of the faceless man, he was turning all kinds of fucking shapes. Like he was an old dude, he was a tall, like so I don't know, but I don't think he could become a little. Yeah, he did. He was the short waif girl. So yes, I take that back. They can change size. That's a fact. They actually can. By the last two seasons, everything seemed to indicate that Arya would use her faceless man abilities to kill Cersei. Instead, Arya never kills Cersei. In fact, she never uses her faceless man abilities again after wiping out House Frey. Well, come on. What I mean, that's enough, right? She did a couple things. She killed Trant, she killed Frey, the whole house Frey. Game of Thrones made it seem like Arya's time in Bravos was about honing her talents as a faceless man, specifically not basic training to make her fast enough to stab the Night King. The only thing that her faceless man skills resulted in was fan service. Disagree. All right. What happened to Dothraki and Unsullied after season 8? Well, in it, Grey Worm, the head of the Unsullied, takes the Unsullied on their ships and they go to Noth, which we're going to talk about that in a second. And the Dothraki mostly all died fighting the Night King. So I don't know what they're asking about here. Unsullied and Dothraki fought against Waterfell, as well as taking of King's Landing. Winterfell's forces lost a massive amount of bodies during the former. It's never made clear just how sturdy Daenerys' army is heading into the Battle of King's Landing or even after. Logic would indicate most of the Dothraki died during the Battle of Winterfell, but a huge horde can be seen in the last 2 episodes. Yeah, there's definitely a good chunk of Dothraki left, but they're gonna hop on the fucking ship with the Unsullied and go to Noth. Now, in the show, Miss Sunday is a character that the head of the Unsullied falls in love with, and she comes from a place called Noth. And she gets killed, and so kind of as a, I don't know, like an homage or just like a something to her, we're gonna go to Noth and like protect the people of Noth. The thing is, in the books, you can't go to Noth unless you're from Noth. If you are an outsider and you come to Noth and spend any amount of time there, you're gonna die of this disease that only the Nothians are immune to. So it was kind of messed up that she even offered to take him there when she was alive, knowing that he would die. And then, in the show, them going. So this is all something that the writers of the show just did not get from they just didn't read enough of the books, I guess. They didn't read that part where it tells you about that, I guess, or they just didn't know or didn't care or just said, fuck it, we'll just do it anyways. But
Right.
yeah, technically they can't go to Noth. So who knows? Who was Azor Ahai? Game of Thrones brought up and subsequently dropped several prophecies throughout its 8-season run, but none were as pervasive or prominent as the prince who was promised, which Melisandre mentioned as one of her many visions. Melisandre originally believed that Stannis was the prince before reinterpreting his identity as Jon Snow, and then as Daenerys, because then at the same time, the Red Priestess and Meereen prophesied Daenerys as the princess who was promised, because the word for prince and princess in High Valyrian is gender neutral. Besides Jon and Dany, audiences theorized that Azor Ahai could have been anyone from Jaime to Arya and even Beric. The fact Game of Thrones never clears up who the prince was promised identity is frustrating, and the show places so much emphasis on the prophecy only for nothing to come out of it. Um, well,
wasn't Azor Ahai the wasn't he the person that led the charge against what do you call him, the white what are
the
they?
White
What
Walk,
help me out here?
White
The White
Walkers, the
Walkers.
White
Wasn't he one of them? Yeah, wasn't he one
in the
that
show?
led the charge against the White Walkers? Yeah, in the books, the show
No,
should have been in the show
no,
too.
yeah, no. He actually is not a character. He's a prophecy. He's the prince who was promised. It's a part of a prophecy from this religion that there's this one, prince that's going to come with a flaming sword and save the world. Technically, it's not really anybody. Um, you know, she predicts it to be Stannis, and then of course he dies, and it's not him. And then she predicts it to be Jon Snow, and then and then she gets with Daenerys, and then she's like, well, actually, it could be a princess. So then it's Daenerys. It's not anybody. It's a religious prophecy, just
It
like
never came true.
that never comes true. Just like any religious prophecy, when they're like, "Oh, the world's going to end in 2012." Well, it's 2022. Didn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, there's always these. And I know the whole thing about the Mayan calendar, but no, I'm just saying religious prophecies
Right.
aren't.
Nah, my take on the Mayan calendar was they just ran out of stone and just ended like any other calendar.
Well, they actually
They
had one
it just
after. There's actually one after that no one talks about. They didn't. It didn't end there. There's another one. They're actually like seasonal calendars where they
yeah, that's what I
have.
mean. It just ran out of it
Yeah,
just
there was
ran out of
one
calendars.
before it. There's one before it. There's one after it.
Yeah,
So why they
just ran out of
decided
calendars.
it was going to end after this one, I don't know, because then there's a whole nother one after that. So yeah, they don't. Again, religious prophecy. So I don't think that you're going to get. I'm sorry, guys. You're not going to get like a definitive answer on who this was, and I don't think it was supposed to be anybody. It wasn't that intentional. How much of the future can Bran see? I yeah, he pretty much.
I don't know.
Well, no,
I would
but
have to say to be limited to the writers. So what the writers, you know,
yeah.
say
Well,
he
what
can
he
and can't
does,
see.
but what his ability lets him do is it lets him see what's going on right now anywhere in the world, and he can see and like watch it replay like he's watching a movie of anything that's happened in history, anything that's happened from now to before. But future, he doesn't. He can like foresee, what's going to happen. But he doesn't like his power is not to like see into the future. Um, by the end of the series, Bran Stark could see into the past, present, and future, seemingly aware that he was meant to become the king all along. His green sight he knows it now. His green sight revealed some of the biggest plot twists in the show's history, like Jon Snow's real parentage. That's a historical thing, as well as foreshadowing King's Landing destruction as early as season 4. This, of course, begs the question: how much does Bran actually know? Yeah, he doesn't know. Did he always know that he would one day become king? Can he only see the future occasionally, or can he see it all the time? Does he choose what he can see? More importantly, the show never addresses why exactly he can see in the future. The fact he keeps his eyes on the Night King's movement in 7 is important, but he ends up doing nothing in the Battle of Winterfell. For most fans, it feels like Bran
See,
became
this
a
is
theater solely to show audiences plot points no one else
this,
could.
see this is where I have to interject. Who cares? Um, it
Yeah,
takes all the fun out of it.
right.
That's too many questions. That's too much.
Yeah, I
Use your
mean,
imagination and just let it be what it is. Uh,
basically.
that's like saying, yeah, just let it go. I mean, we like what it is. We like what they presented to us, and yes, you're supposed to ask those questions of what they presented, but I don't want to know too much because then it takes away from the whole lore of the character.
Right.
In my opinion.
Big shout out to Slade Wilson for
Sweet Wilson, do your thing,
blocking
baby.
that spam like a linebacker.
Coming over the top, coming off the top rope
Drop.
with the atomic elbow.
Boom.
Shakalaka.
I assume you mean Melisandre. I don't know.
Yeah.
She was cool. Yeah. All right, y'all. Stu, anything else you wanna touch on? Or I think we pretty
Uh,
much did the damn thing.
yeah, we did. I had one more thing I had to show you. Hang on before we go. This was for Norin Rad. Just wanted to show him this because he inspired me to do it.
Oh shit.
All right, this is for Norin Rad because he inspired me to do it. And I wouldn't have got it done if it wasn't for him. Booyah!
Boom.
Got
Look at
the
that.
icon and rocket #1, even though it came back at 9.4. Don't know why I never opened it. I actually own two copies. I got a copy I read and opened, and this is the
Right.
variant cover. And the variant
And
covers I
that's
got
the one
sent
you
off.
never opened and they gave you
Never opened. Pulled it off the shelf, sent it right off to get tagged and slabbed. This is what it
uh,
came back at. I know. I know.
yeah.
I
But you
know,
never
man. I
know,
know.
man. CBC is inconsistent as fuck. CBCS is way more
Yeah.
consistency. They're
I
Beckett
you
trained.
know what? I think I'm gonna start sending comics there instead, man. Just to see. I just want to see what the difference is.
Well,
Like I said,
they're
we've only seen a
strict.
10. We've only seen a 10 one time in our lives. Same thing with this. I tagged and slabbed the variant cover
Oh, that's nice. What do you
and the
mean we've
regular
only
cover.
seen a
And
10 once in our lives?
remember we had the one guy on that time and he had a 10.
Oh, yeah.
He had a
Mm,
joint that was a 10. I was like, yo, I never seen a 10.
yeah.
And he
Yeah.
looked at us like we were crazy for not seeing it. I was like, bruh.
Yeah, no, they're out there, but they usually come direct from the publisher. Like you can't once a comic's been sold or sent to a comic store, it's already fucking not a 10. Like
All right, so
shipping
here's the
and
back. Yeah, here's the back of it.
yeah,
And
that's
this
that
is why I got
foil.
a slab. Yeah,
That's
this is why
hot.
I got a slab. Yeah, because it's a foil. And I got a slab for that reason. So,
Static.
uh, yeah. But I did buy two copies. And I got one copy slab. And the other copy I rent. And it's now sitting tagged and it's bagged and boarded. And this
Mhm.
one right here is for Norin Rad because you're so radical.
Uh-oh.
This is
What we got here? We got some Miles.
Yes, sir. We got a Miles Morales, and
Duncan.
you see that number right there.
That 2-3.
Yes, sir. And as you notice, the pose.
That damn screen
Yes,
glare.
sir.
Yeah, he's got the J's on, the ones.
Yeah, and that's the 23. That's what the 23 is for.
Fresh
Yeah,
off the
yes,
press.
sir.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's one where Venom is like stuffing him and dunking on him too. They made a variant of that. I think Mike May used variant, but yeah, they make a lot of dope variants for Miles now.
Yeah, they do make. I usually get them all and slab them if I can find them. Usually, but here's the crazy part: I never see them in the comic shop. I gotta go online, go on
Mm-hmm.
eBay, bid on them, and then buy. I never have seen one in the comic shop.
Probably won't.
Uh, and I actually got this one from Lance, the regular collecting comic book guy.
Oh,
He actually sent me this. Uh,
whatever happened to
he
Lance?
had
Was he
a
gonna come on the show?
yeah, he's gonna come back. He's got some stuff to show.
That's good.
He was actually in the midst of getting one, so he got two. I paid him for one, and
Mm,
he got one, and he found a guy that had more than one.
mm.
Greedy bastard. You know what I mean? So I don't know why that guy needed more than one. I only wanted one. So that shout out to Lance for getting me
Mar-
that. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have that right now.
Yeah, and
But it's
nice big
definitely going up. Yeah, it's definitely going up on my wall of fame.
um I feel like I no, 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 I guess not. Wait. Oh yeah, I do have this. Pretty cool. I thought this was pretty dope. I got the yin yang on the background. So that's a dope Shang-Chi, early Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, 35 cent cover
Still
price,
35 cents.
still 35. And I also got Yang
uh,
#1, first edition,
uh,
20 cent cover price. This is an old book. This right here is I think it's 1960 something or 70. But this is from Carlton Comics. Carlton Comics is the one that DC came from. So DC, what used to be Carlton, and then they became DC. And this was 1973. Pretty cool. Yang. Is Slade not here? Hold on. If Slade's not here, I gotta. Oh, he did. Okay, you got him. Got him. I don't know why these chodes keep popping in here. This silly shit. Like, dude, we don't want none. But anyway, sorry about that. Yang, pretty cool. So yeah, guys, that is our show, man. So boom. Boom.
yeah,
Big,
that Shang-Chi. I'd have to send that off. I'm sorry. I
yeah.
gotta get sent off. That's gotta get slapped up.
Oh, I forgot. I was gonna show y'all these House of the Dragon little behind the scenes shits. All right, check this out. This is George R. R. Martin. Here we go. Run this.
Dragons will rule the Seven Kingdoms for the next 100 years. Just as they did the last.
The best fiction, the best drama is about characters. The story of House of the Dragon is a story about very flawed human beings, capable of doing good things, capable of doing monstrous things, capable of courage, capable of cowardice. These are the kind of characters that I love the most. Game of Thrones begins roughly 298 AC, almost 300 years after Aegon's conquest. House of Dragon takes place a couple hundred years before Game of Thrones. Jaehaerys Targaryen, the old king who was the fourth Targaryen to rule over Westeros, he was only 14 when he ascended to the Iron Throne, and he ruled for 55 years. It was a very peaceful time in the history of Westeros. It was a time of prosperity. King's Landing really grew enormously. It was a good time. Viserys the First, who is the heir that was chosen by the Great Council, when Jaehaerys passes away, he takes over, and he is now reigning over the Seven Kingdoms. There were a lot of Targaryens at that point, and you can see how the seeds of war are sometimes planted in a time of peace. People die, and the sons take over for fathers as lords, and they don't necessarily think they're bound by their fathers' allegiances or decisions or vows. So little by little, the seeds are sprouting. Game of Thrones focused on the Starks and the Lannisters. For House of the Dragon, the Targaryens themselves, the House of the Dragon, are at center, but two of the biggest players in the Dance with the Dragons Civil War are the Valerians and the Hightowers. In terms of history in Westeros, the Hightowers are the oldest. They've been there for thousands of years. Their seat of power is Old Town, which was for many hundreds and thousands of years the biggest city in Westeros. They're a very rich house. Old Town is.
All right, you want to see the second half?
Let's do it.
Wealthy from trade mostly. And in the center of it is the High Tower, for which the High Towers take their name. Lord Hightower is in Old Town, ruling over his domains in the city. But his younger brother, Otto Hightower, is the hand of the king when the story opens. Same position we saw Ned Stark play to Robert at the beginning of Game of Thrones. The Valerians were also a house from the Freehold of Valeria, the mightiest empire in at least the West in my world. And they actually arrived in Westeros before the Targaryens. They were not dragon lords, however. They were seafarers. At that time, the Freehold of Valeria depended a lot on its trade, and it was a good position to dominate trade from all the kingdoms of Westeros and from other places even further north. So they moved for reasons of trade and wealth. Corlys Velaryon is Lord Admiral and Master of Ships, as his own grandfather was before him of a similar name. So since Aegon's conquest, the Velaryons have been very high in the councils of the House Targaryen. And after all his voyages, he's married to Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was. House Targaryen and House Velaryon, they were close. There was a definite relationship between them. The Targaryens are also an ancient house, but they're not an ancient Westerosi house. They knew that destruction was coming to Valeria and went far away from the capital city, and they settled on the volcanic island of Dragonstone. They were dragon lords in Valeria. Now, dragons are really formidable, and they can turn the tide of a battle. It flies. It's difficult to hit. It breathes fire, against which most knights and men-at-arms have little or no protection. So if you have dragons, and that's where the nuclear option analogy comes in, you're hard to mess around with. So the dragons and fear of dragons was one of the things that made the Targaryens very secure in their power.
Yeah. Yeah, Slade. I might have to get a couple of them joints. I mean, I was always House Stark. You know what I mean? I was always House Stark. The wolf. That's my totem. It's my sigil. But the Targaryens, man, there's something else. But I'm an underdog kind of guy, so that's why I rock with Starks. But yeah, man. We all wish we could have a dragon. So that is George R.R. Martin sort of breaking down the show. This scene, or this part right here, is more with the actors and stuff. So here we go. We're gonna run another 2-minute joint. Let's chop it up.
I, Viserys Targaryen, do hereby name Rhaenyra Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne.
The Targaryens are the sort of fascinating dynasty that we don't really know much about from the original books, because at that point, they've all died out.
I don't even know where I first mentioned the idea of a Targaryen civil war called The Dance with the Dragons. But Ryan and Miguel and I have been working together, and it's exciting.
Well, as any great tale out of George's world, it's about a power struggle for the throne. But the unique one about this one is that instead of it being one family fighting another family, like Lannisters fighting the Starks, this story is about the Targaryens fighting themselves.
We were 200 years in the past, but we were at the height of the Targaryen Empire, which was a time of decadence. And by definition, the height of an empire usually means the height of its technology, the height of its hubris. We had to show this idea that this was an opulent and decadent group of people, no war for 60 years. I mean, they're a happy bunch.
And everybody knew that if you messed with the Targaryens, you would get the dragons, so nobody dared to overthrow them.
I, Lord Hobart Hightower, promise to be faithful to King Viserys.
It took a lot of doing, but we were able to put together a hell of a cast.
we're looking for very specific people. So the very first person we wanted was Paddy Considine.
I think Viserys struggles with being the king. Viserys feels a duty to keep peace amongst the kingdoms. Being king is a very difficult seat to be in. Viserys has an awareness of just how dangerous it is to sit on the Iron Throne.
Targaryen must understand this to be king. Or queen.
Rhaenyra is strong-minded. She's smart. I think she's underestimated.
You have dragon riders, father.
She realizes that the women within the kingdom spend their entire lives serving. She wrestles with it. She doesn't like it. She doesn't agree with it.
Brother?
Daemon.
Daemon has a great affiliation and love and admiration for his brother, the king. But Daemon's all swords and knives, really. I do think on some level he wants to cause chaos. I think he's interested in chaos. I think he survives in chaos quite well.
3, 2, 1, action!
He's got a very, quite clear moral compass. And you're either in it or you're out of it.
It's named King's Landing because that's where Aegon the Conqueror, Aegon the Dragon, landed with his ships. And when he decided to begin the conquest of Westeros, and they built the Red Keep, which became the center of King's Landing and the place of the Targaryens and the Iron Throne.
In the original books, George always described the throne as being made from thousands of swords. I wanted to make a hybrid version that was closer to something that's described in the original book, that still honored the throne from the original series.
It's a kind of a throne that says a statement. Look at my power. These are treasures of people I have killed or conquered.
Cameras are running.
When I walked into the throne room for the first time, there was a sort of moment that I had of like, oh wow, I'm on the Iron Throne.
For me, it's really this particular period in Westeros. It was a time of high decadence and peace and prosperity. So you get to see what the realm looks like before it descends into the post-decadence of war that you see in the original series.
You sound like a Lannister. Why you say that? Oh man, the Lannisters, man, they're an interesting bunch. Yeah, no, I don't think it's gonna be an Obi-Wan here. I don't think we're dealing with another Obi-Wan. I think it's gonna be cool to see, like, if you notice some of the set pieces, like some of the sets where they were, like where the throne is and stuff, that's gonna be the same place that is from the original show. Said he got told. Oh, he said he got to read it first. They better be cool. Yo, that reminds me of Yondu. Remember what Yondu said? He said, Star-Lord said, "You look like Mary Poppins." And Yondu said, "Is he cool?" He said, "Hell yeah, he's cool. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all." Yeah. So they were talking about the throne. If you remember this throne from the show, it's got the few swords behind them, but it's basically like the size of a chair, and it's got, but it was supposed to be made of the 1,000 swords of Aegon's conquered enemies. That it was melted together by his dragon. Well, obviously in the Game of Thrones, that little throne was nowhere near 1,000 swords. I think they said it wasn't even close to 100. So they didn't really depict it, but like, I see how they tried to add a bunch of more swords and stuff like that for this show, but this is what the throne looks like. I mean, look at that. Right here, that's a little man. There's a little man right there sitting in a chair. And this is a staircase up to that chair, but this whole thing is the throne. These are all the swords. So that's how huge it is. You see that little man? Yeah, so it's very massive. Actually, there's a guy standing over here. You can see right there, down at the bottom. A couple of guys. But yeah, so it's yeah, it's cool that they're gonna try to make it bigger and stuff like that. That was one of the coolest things. And then where's Sada? I mean, will she be back? Slade, love him some Sada. Slade, love him some Sada. She's I don't know where she is right now, actually. But she'll probably be back Wednesday. So, and we'll be back Wednesday. But yeah, we rocked it, man. We rocked out for 2 hours and 40 minutes. It is 9:15. I've got probably 30 minutes before the corner store closes, guys, and I gotta hit that shit before I call it a night. But anyways, we'll be back, man, Wednesday and Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check it every Wednesday, Saturday, every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, 6:30. Guys, please leave a comment down in the comment section. Even if you were in the chat, those comments really help us grow. And the more we grow, the more content we can bring you guys, and we can really, do this thing right. But peace, everybody. Peace, peace, peace. And we will see y'all on the flip side.